Hey, welcome everybody. We were off for a little while, but we're excited to be back on this on episode 21 of the Edge Grip podcast. And today we got a legend in the paddock, Steve Biganski, with us, who just had a terrific day at Chuckwalla. And we're going to pick his brain on a lot of different things from a big veteran and expert racer. Thank you
And
for
and big
joining us,
yeah,
Steve.
Thanks for having me,
thank
guys.
you.
Thanks
And
a
big
lot.
thank you to Sean Woolery that made it happen. He I know you have some issues with your vision, so he kind of
Yeah,
hooked up the
yeah,
computer,
yeah.
figure out the technical
You know,
issues, the
if
internet
it's anything more
connection.
than turning my phone on, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. And
At
you
this point, yeah.
and you guys
So yeah,
are in Chuckwalla now.
thanks for having me. Yeah, we just went. Sean's got some guys that race in the ARMA series that are up in Northern California, and they are going to be running, in the series. But they had a couple of bikes up north, and rather than them come all the way down to El Cajon, we decided to just come up here and they brought the bikes down, they unloaded, and we got everything in the trailer. So as soon as we get done here, we were gonna spend the night, and Sean said, "Let's just go home." So hopefully he's up for the drive because I think both of us are running on about maybe 3 hours of sleep last night. So it is what it is.
That's the life of a racer and a pit crew.
I'm still at the racetrack, and that's all that matters, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I haven't been out here for a while because so I'm wandering around the pits, and I ran into Alfonso Califano. He's racing the Aprilia, and he had a problem. He came over to our garage, over to our pits here, and he's like, it just shuts off and goes back on again. He doesn't know what it is, and it was to where he wasn't going to be able to race. So I called up a couple of guys, and they said tip over switch, and I went, really? So he changed the battery, blah blah blah. It was dangerous. He'd roll the throttle on it, would just shut off for a second, then come back on again. It's like you're gonna hurt yourself. You can't run it like that. So we thought it was the battery because batteries can do weird stuff. So then we found out. I guess he swapped. He had another one, so they swapped the module over, and he comes flying by here, just bouncing it off the rev limiter. Looked over, went like this. So it's all fixed. And he went back out, and then every time I see this guy, he's run Dunlops on the bike, and now he's on Pirellis, and I'm not real familiar with the Pirellis. And he just got another shock, so I went over to see him and looked at the rear tire. It didn't look very good. So he's, I guess the SCOs, SC1s, SC2s. I'm not real familiar, but I guess the lower the number, the softer the compound.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he had a used, I think he had an SC1 on it, and then he went to an SCO, and it's tearing pretty good. It looks like a cold tear. So I says, bro, go harder. Put a harder tire on it. You're not building any heat.
Yeah.
So he
Right.
just kind of looks at me, and I guess he went back out, and we took a little spring out of the back, blah blah blah. And that didn't work. Put it back to where it was, and then he put a harder tire on it, and all of a sudden the tire just like everything's beautiful again. So it just amazes me. Um, you do this long enough, and you think you got everything figured out, and then it's something else. You're always learning. You'll never figure it all out completely. Nowhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's good to go. So I think I told him, if he's got any questions, call me. But I think he's fine.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you're
he's
saying
been
that.
getting. I'm
You're
sorry.
saying that on your one-man expert, you have MotoGP teams with 12 people sitting there for half a year trying to figure out why the guy's running 2 seconds slower than his pitmate, you know?
I couldn't even imagine. I went to Coda. I think it was what year was it, guys, when Marquez crashed out, and then Rossi and who's the guy in the Suzuki? Rins,
Alex,
right? And
Alex,
then
the year Alex Rins won.
Marquez was gone. He crashed out of the lead, and then Rossi's now second, and now he's leading it.
Yeah.
And
Was it
Rins is
18
on
or
Suzuki,
19?
right? Was it Rins? Yeah.
No, if Rossi was still racing, it must have been
Yeah. See,
16.
whenever it was, yeah, Rossi was still racing, right? I don't remember. I think it was. I don't know if it's Vinales was his teammate then, or yeah, I think it was. So, anyways,
Yeah.
um, I had access to get into the paddock, and I didn't go in there during the week. I mean during the day. But after the race was over, I got a chance to go over to Park Ferme because Rossi set I think his quickest lap on the last lap, but Rins got by him, I guess, and he ended up getting second. So I just those races are what they're 40 minutes. They're how long?
Yeah, just
About,
The
about.
yeah.
300 horsepower bikes that weigh what 350 pounds or whatever they are. And I went over there and kind of the first thing I want to do is see what the tires look like. Right? I just wanted to see. I mean, how can you set your fastest lap on the next to the last lap on a bike that makes 300 horsepower, weighs that much? I mean, electronics. There's so much stuff. So I went over and looked at the tires. It looked like just smooth little balls of rubber on the edges. It looked like it'd go another race. And it's like, how do these guys do this? I mean, where does all that? I mean, with all the power and the engine braking, and it's just overwhelming. And then you look into the pits though, and you wander through the pits and you look at the guys that are doing all the stuff, the mechanics, the engineers. They're not in their 20s. They're not half of them are not in their 30s. These guys have been around for a while, and
Yeah.
probably half the team's personnel are all ex-racers.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, look how good. I think that was one of Rossi's strongest points. When he was racing, a lot of the guys they say the bike's pushing in the front, and they go off into the motorhome. And Rossi would be that guy that he'd sit down with Jeremy Burgess, and the engineers, and he wanted to know what they were doing, why they were doing it, so he knew what to expect the next time he got on the bike.
Well,
And I think
Burgess had a
that
lot of
was one of the.
information from Mick Doohan, so
Oh yeah, oh
yeah,
sure, yeah.
yeah.
And this goes way back. We can get into all the stuff that I did, but in the end of, I think it was 90 when Mick was on his run. I think it was 90. He won those five in a row. It might have been 95. I think
He started winning 94. So
94. So I think it was 90. The end of 95, or it might have been 94. They had Nicky gets a phone call and he calls me at my house. He goes, "I just got invited to do 10 laps on Doohan's 500 at Suzuka and 10 laps on Taddy Okada's Works 250 at Suzuka." And with Burgess there, Doohan there, I don't know that I'm not familiar with the Japanese team, but it was the Works 250 Honda 100. That was before unleaded fuel, so we were talking a 200-pound bike with 115 horsepower. The 250s. So Nicky got to ride both those bikes. And I'd have to call him and ask him again, but he was faster on the 250 than he was the 500. And Mick's there, and they probably calmed it down for him a little bit as far as power goes. But Nicky was telling me, he says the thing gets to 10 grand, and it wants to flip over backwards. Doesn't matter how fast you're going, fifth gear, sixth gear, doesn't matter. And it's like I remember him coming back. And I think some of his some of his journalists were giving him a hard time. He says, "You have no idea." And I remember Nicky coming back going, "I got a hell of a lot more respect for Mick Doohan than I did before. To ride, I mean, you guys watched him.
yeah.
You know, to
Yeah.
be able to slide the back of that bike." And it was funny because Nicky told me that Mick made a comment to him. It's like, "How do you ride this thing?" And he's just like, "You just got to spin it up, mate." It's just like, yeah, okay. Easier said than done.
He also rode it with a non-functioning leg, pretty much.
Oh, I know, thumb brake. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was him that he was the one that got the thumb brake all started.
Yeah.
So, but
Mm.
like I said, Nicky did talk about the 250. He says, "Steve, you have no idea," because I'd ridden, got out of seat time on 250s, and he says, "You have this acceleration. You think you're on an R1. You can't imagine the acceleration." And the 500, I guess he started to figure it out, but he only got 10 laps. But I mean, can you imagine showing up at a track and you get 10 laps around Suzuka on the bike that won the world championship in 250 and 500? It's like die and go to, I can die right now. So yeah, I mean, he got to, the only other guy, you guys probably know what he is. There was only two journalists in the world that got to ride those bikes. One was Alan Cathcart, and the other one was Nick. So that's to be picked out of a big group of journalists and some fast riders and fast magazine guys. That was that was pretty special for him. I was so happy for him.
I can
Yeah.
So,
imagine.
anyways,
Well, speaking of
yeah,
difficult bikes, didn't you race a TZ?
I did. Well, I started off, in the 70s. I used to ride my bike. I was living in Florida. It was like 200 miles. I'd go up and watch the Daytona 200. And I went up and watched it a couple of times when the Triumphs and Dick Man and the Hondas and stuff. And then I didn't go for a few years. And then I went up because you could camp outside the track. So I had a CL 175 that I bought. So I'd ride up with my tent and my sleeping bag. And I went in 73. I was there when Jarno Saarinen won it on the 350 TZ, the liquid cooled bike. And that was it for me with two strokes. As soon as I got back home, I got to find an RD 350. I want to go race one of these things. I mean, I'm not going to get a TZ. So I found a kind of an old clapped out used 350. And back then the production classes were big. So, if you go out to the local races, the 350 production class, where you got to be stock engine, you can put shocks on it, modify the forks, wear sets, take off the headlight, the tail light, all that stuff. So that's what I kind of learned on. And then it graduated. There was a guy that he caught his attention, and he got me a little Aramaki. That's the one in the photo that you guys have.
Mm.
And that was a good motor, but the chassis was, it wasn't that good. So I rode that for a year. And then the guy that bought that bike said, "Hey, I already had my novice license. I raced a couple of nationals, but didn't do very well, maybe top 10." And then he calls the same guy that bought the 350. Said, "So what do we got to do to run up front?" And I says, "We need a new bike." So he says, "How do you get one?" And it's just like, well, back then you had to fill out a resume and send it into Yamaha, right? So we went down to the local Yamaha dealer, talked to the manager, and how do we get a TZ 250? And that was the first year in '76 was the first year of the monoshock. So they released the bikes, I think, in the end of '75. So we filled out the application. I already had a pro novice license. So a week later, we got a letter back saying, "Okay, all you need is money." So how much? The brand new TZ with a spares kit was $3,500, and we ordered it. And I remember showing up at the shop and I was taking it out of the crate. You had to mounted the fairing on it, and I just took it out because we had plans. We heard that the bike stock wasn't going to be fast enough to run in AMA stuff. It's going to be okay for pro stuff. So we had already done some investigating and found out what you got to do to make it fast enough to run in like a Daytona the novice class, which was pull the engine out of the frame, uh, the extra cylinder and head out of the spares kit, uh, put it in a crate and send it to Don Vesco in California because he was the one that built Jarno Saarinen's 350. And then whatever they do to the cylinder, I had no clue. They bored the carburetors out and cut the head or whatever they do. And then it came back with a set of pipes, Vesco pipes. And that was $2,500, almost the cost of the motorcycle. So I got the bike, I rode it, I put 100 miles on it. We took it out of the crate. Um, got it back about 3 weeks later, about 2 weeks before Daytona, the novice race. And we can get into all the details of what happened, but I ended up winning my heat race. They had two 5-lappers. The heat race was won by some guy named Eddie Lawson. And because he started on the front because he had points from the year before, but I didn't have enough points to, I started like fourth row, but there were only 5 lappers. So I managed to win mine. I came from the 5th row and passed the leader on the last lap in the chicane, and I won my heat race. So the guys can check you can get under the AMA logistics, but I'm sitting there next to Eddie Lawson on the front row for my first pro novice race at Daytona. And back then it was kind of an East Coast West Coast thing. The East Coast guys didn't like guys from California, and because most of them because they were faster than us, probably that's the main reason. But I still remember after qualifying, I'm sitting back in the pits and I'm on the front row of a novice race, and like I said, the reason that I was able to do that is this modification by Don Vesco that was pipes, engine work. That was 4 horsepower, and 4
That's all it
horsepower
took.
is a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the TZs made back then stock. There, I think there was 60,
62 or something
I
like
think
that.
60
Yeah.
horsepower, maybe something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I said, you got the engine back. The carburetors they bored out the carbs. On a lathe, I guess. I don't know. All I did, they were pre-jetted. It was jetted for sea level because they do it for anybody. You just need to, you just had to have the money. So put the motor back in. I think I put 100 miles on it just to break it all in because the crank everything was brand new. So I went to Daytona and I couldn't believe that this thing was. I rode it stock, right? But as soon as
What kind of oil? What kind of oil did you put in the
Castrol
gas?
R30, Castrol R30, and lots of oil, 20 to 1.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what they said to run. I just, what
So
I just did
4%
with that.
basically. 4
Yeah,
4%.
so yeah, you're looking at what is that, 20 to 1? Yeah, like a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
And I remember you get the blowback out of the carburetors, it'd make a mess of the motorcycle. Oh my God, trying to get that stuff cleaned off. But the bike was fast. So like that was on the qualifying was on, I think Thursday. I think they ran the novice race because they had the 250 novice, 250 expert. There was a bunch of 250s at Daytona. And I think there was 60 novices and like 70 experts. So me and Eddie, and there was 2 other guys, and I remember their names. One guy was from Miami. His name was Scott Shin. He had also the same bike, Vesco motor, the whole thing. And then there was a kid that you got to go back to look. He was young. I was in my 20s back then. I forget how old I was, but it was like 76. I was 23. So
You told me you're 28 now.
29.
29. Okay.
So anyways, this kid from Alabama, his name was Lance Jones, and he was like the new up and coming dirt track kid. They had junior. You had to go through the junior ranks on an XR 750 before they let you ride, expert class. But he was like the top. I think he won the junior championship. So it was me and Eddie, him and this guy Scott, and we broke away from the pack. And it was like the bikes were so even. If you were going down the back straightaway, leading it, 3 bikes would come by. And then if you were, whoever went into turn 1, you'd go through the infield and go back out of the bank end for 3 more bikes that come back by you. Or if you were 4th, you could draft by everybody. So this was going on. I forget how many laps it was. Probably halfway through the race, something like that. And then we got into lappers. And, I let a few laps. Eddie would, no matter how hard I tried, he'd find a way. He'd come back by me, right? But it was a pretty good battle. So we got into lappers like maybe 3/4 of the way through the race, and we got into. I remember going to the International Horseshoe. There's a pack of about 4 guys, and Eddie got through them, and I got held up. So he gapped us. He probably had 3 or 4 seconds on me. There was no catching him. Once you get that gap out, maybe he was sandbagging a little bit at the beginning, but he put his head down, and no matter what I did, I couldn't catch him. But I'm second. So I remember looking over my shoulder, And Scott and Lance were, maybe 10 bike lengths behind me, and they weren't. I was waiting for them to come by. They never got close to get my draft, so I'm second. So you know what? I'm good, right? I mean, I'm not going to catch them. I'm not going to throw it on the ground. I need to get out of here in one piece. I can't hurt myself. Thing was moving around. The tires were kind of done back then. They didn't last that long. So either the lap before the white flag, I come off through the tri-oval, come into the infield, and I start downshifting because you got to go from sixth to second for the left-hander, coming into the infield. And I'm moving the pedal, and it's stopping, like the pedal's still moving up and down, and it won't downshift. It's stuck in sixth. I was like, no way. And it's like you pull the clutch in, and as soon as you let the clutch out, it's still in sixth. I mean, the pedal was moving, but it wasn't turning the shift drum. So I coasted off, let the clutch out again. It's not stopped on this, rolled over into the grass, shut the engine off. And I'm trying to dry shift it, rocking it back and forth. It ain't coming out of sixth gear. So I just sat there. Eddie comes by, lap later, holding the checkered flag, doing the victory lap. Just, Lance Scott. I don't know who got second and third, whether it's Lance or Scott. And it's just like, why? What happened? I mean, something stupid. It's a brand new bike. So I got back to the pits and put it on the stand, cut the safety wire off the drain plug and pulled the clutch cover off and the primary, pulled the clutch basket and all that other stuff because I had to see. So I pulled the primary cover off, clutch cover, and a 30-cent spring broke.
Oh,
There's one on this. There's one on the shift drum for upshifts. It's a little arm that rocks back and forth on the
yeah.
shift descent. And same as the RD, it's the same shift mechanism as an RD 350, basically.
Yeah, it's the brain of the brain of the gearbox.
As soon as
right?
I pull the side cover off, I saw something drop into the oil, and I got a magnet and pulled it out. And it was a spring that, according to the part number, sells for 35 cents.
Oh,
It broke or it moved?
The end of it is it's like a spring with two coils on the end, and one of the coils snapped off.
So it snapped.
So it wouldn't allow the shifter, it wouldn't allow the thing to downshift. And it's like, you know what? It is what it is. I mean, I was devastated at first because all I'm thinking about, and I hate to say this, but all I'm thinking about is I'm going to be in cycle news, right? I mean, Eddie Lawson, I finished in second to Eddie, and Eddie was the talk of the town back then. He was winning everything. And so, I'm gonna be in cycle news. I'm gonna maybe get my picture because I've never, had anything in cycle news before. And I mean, talking about letting the air out of your balloon. Oh my God. And it's just like, you go back and you think about it. It wasn't meant to be. Right? I mean, nobody ever seen that spring break. Right?
yeah.
So what do you do?
A brand new bike.
What do you do?
Well,
it's just like,
look, you got it there in one piece. If it was a four-stroke engine where you count on the engine braking, could have ended in,
Sure. Yeah. So, like I said, it is what it is. So anyways, yeah, I did a couple of more races that year, and then I got my got enough points to get the expert, turn it 250 expert, and then you have to accumulate enough points before you get your Formula One license. So at the end of 79, so not end of So I kind of stopped in 78. I did some expert races because the guy, I don't know if you guys remember Henry DeGao, he ran all the Macau races. He was a neighbor of mine, and he decided he wanted to do the whole series on Formula One. He had a TC 750. He had the Toomey pipes, and he had some cylinder works. It was pretty fast, and Henry was fast. So he wanted to know if I'd go to some of the nationals with him and be his tuner. I said sure. So those TZs were so good. I got to actually work on them for a couple of years, and he let me ride it a couple of times at practice at Moroso, and so I'd ridden one a few times, and it's they weren't as everybody thinks these things were just violent, and it's all what you get what you turn here. That's all it is. You turn too much, you get in trouble. So, so I helped him for 2 years. And then the guy that bought me my 250, I was still in touch with him. I get a call. He lived down in Fort Lauderdale. I get a call at the end of 1980. Like the season was over in like October, like it is still, Says, hey, I got something I want you to come down and take a look at. He was like half an hour down in Fort Lauderdale. I says, what is it? He goes, you got to come down. I want to show you something. So I had an RD 400. I bought a brand new blue one, 77. Jumped on the bike and went down to, he was a big electrical contractor, kind of a wealthy guy. So I pull into his driveway to get off the bike, and he opens up the garage door. And here's the TZ 750 that finished second behind Dale Singleton in 1980. And Dimag, cast 3-spoke cast, cast aluminum die cast wheels, AP Lockheed brakes, forks that actually had clickers, believe it or not. It had because the stock forks on a TZ just got preload. That's it. It had a shock with a reservoir. The steel wall, the steel line with the gas chamber. It had these really trick pipes. Because the only guy that made pipes, I think, for the TZ back there was Stuart Toomey. So these were factory pipes, and then these carburetors, these magnesium-bodied, Mikuni power jet carburetors. I've never seen a power jet carburetor. So then, unknowing to me, it had OW31 cylinders, OW31 heads, the work stuff like Kenny got. OW31 cranks with the thin rods and a bunch of other stuff. And then I found out later the guy that bought the bike for me, Joe Urbanowski, was good friends with Bob Work, who was Stevie Baker's mechanic. So, all those OW31 parts are supposed to go. I can talk about it now because it's years and years later, but that had stuff on it that's supposed to get crushed. So, I remember the cylinder heads, standard cylinder head on a TZ, the head's vertical, right? So the spark plugs were tilted forward 15 degrees, and there was a teardrop shaped combustion chamber. And I can remember Urbanowski telling me, okay, we're going to go to Daytona next year, you got to make sure that you put rags over those like you're working on it, because if somebody sees those angled spark plug heads, they're not supposed to exist, and I'm not supposed to have them. I'm not supposed to have any, the parts of that. I mean, the bike got second at Daytona by Ron Pierce rode it. So you don't get second at Daytona if it's not a rocket ship. So he says, you want to race this at Daytona next year? And I says, I don't have my Formula One points yet. Right. So I had to ride. That was October. So I had to do, because they don't just hand out licenses. To get a Formula One license, you got to earn it, because they don't just hand it out. I mean, if you're not qualified to ride one of these things, they're not going to let you on it. I remember the first race that I went to, I rode it a couple of practice laps, in Moroso, and I had ridden Henry's TZ, and this thing was like, I didn't have enough, I wasn't brave enough to hold the thing wide open on it because it's kind of a short course. So the first track that I went to was Roebling Road. I don't know if you guys have ridden that in Georgia. It's got a really long, like fourth gear right-hander coming onto a long front straightaway. It's a pretty neat track. So I'd been there before on my 250. So I just went up there, and it was a CCS race. There was another 3 or 4 guys with TZs there, some super bikes. So I can remember the very first practice session. I got the gearing right, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, the thing was jetted perfect. That was the thing about this TZ. It was sorted. Because the trick on those things is carburation. They get a little bit lean and a little bit rich when you open the throttle. It stumbles, and then it hits. And that's where you get in trouble. So it's all about the carburation. The fuel curve has got to be perfect. And anybody knows about carburetors, it's there, an eighth of a turn on an air script can make all the difference in the world. But it was so good, I didn't touch it. I just would play with main jets. So anyways, the first time I come onto the front straightaway to this fourth gear right here, probably 100, maybe equivalent of, say, turn 9 at Big Willow. Kind of like the same radius. And I remember finally the first time I opened this thing, I waited until I was straight up and down before I did it. And this thing, you could literally feel the blood rush to the back of your head. I never had anything. It came out of there in fourth gear and wheelied, just under power. And I've never, I mean, I've been to the track, and all of a sudden, like 2 shifts, I'm already in turn one. It's like I never. So I did like 4 or 5 sessions, and then I came back into the pits, and it's like, I got to race this thing. This is insanity. I mean, like I said, if guys that have ridden one will know what I'm talking about. And this was not, but this wasn't your standard issue TC 750. This thing was it was close to what Stevie Baker and Kenny Roberts used to ride. There were still other parts, that it didn't have the oversized radiator. There's a few things that didn't have, but it did have, the OW 31 cylinders, the trick heads, the bigger 6-pedal reeds instead of 4-pedal reeds. It had these big, really nice carburetors. So it took me. I did like 3 or 4 club races, and then applied for my license, and I got enough points, and we headed to Daytona with it, and it was like, you talk about. I mean, I remember the drive up there. Joe went with me, and I couldn't even think. I mean, I was so nervous, because I'd been to Daytona plenty of times, but not anything. I can't even imagine what it was going to be like getting that thing up onto the banking. So it was funny because we got there, and Joe's Urbanowski's like seasoned veteran. He's been through all the stuff. He's ridden 750s, 250s, and so back then they started practice. I think because they had 250 novice, 250 expert, Formula One, and I don't know if they were doing superbikes yet. Then they had the twins class. Then they had production classes that they ran during the week, like 250 production classes. Anyway, so you show up on Wednesday for tech, and if you got on the line soon enough, you could get out in time to ride, a half a day on Wednesday, because they give you Wednesday, Thursday, Friday before qualifying. So you got 3 days of practice. So I had a garage. He rented a garage. I mean, I'm like factory guy, man. Give me, I felt, So, anyways, we went through tech, went over to Goodyear, had new tires mounted, got their fuel situated, got everything, the tables all set up and toolboxes all out. And this is like, probably, we got in line early. I think this is probably getting around lunchtime. And at lunchtime, they were going to start practice, even if you're still in line in tech, because it took them all day to get everybody through tech. But we got there soon enough. So as soon as we're all done, the bike's on the stands. Gas is, we got to mix up fuel. Joe looks over at me and he goes, "Okay, let's go back to the hotel." And it's like, "What? Let's go back to the hotel." And what do you mean? It's like they're starting practice. He goes, "Nah." He goes, "There hasn't been a vehicle on the infield in 3 weeks since the 24 hours of Daytona. The tracks, it's windy, it's dusty, it's dirty, there's sand everywhere. We're going to go back to the hotel, and we're going to show up tomorrow. The track's all going to be rubbered in, right? Because all you're going to do is go out there and crash. Just like you try to argue with him, and he would give me that look. And he's like, well, load it back in the van. We'll go back to Fort Lauderdale right now. You're going to do what I tell you." So we loaded everything up, and I was like devastated, but I didn't have any choice. So we're loaded everything up, jumped back in the van, closed the garage, locked it up. And as we're driving out of the infield, we stopped right there at the International Horseshoe, because it was longer back then. The track was like 3.87 miles. So it's a longer straightaway from turn 2 to the International Horseshoe. They didn't have that little chicane. It was just a straight shot. But there's big grandstands. The International Horseshoe was the place where they had lots of good, spectator area. So stands were already full. So we just pulled in and stopped and turned the van around so you could see what was going on. So about like 1 o'clock, the first practice out is Formula One, TZ 750s. And back then there was 80 bikes, right? Some RG 500s, but it was all like, there's 80 bikes that qualify. You got 2 waves of 30 and a wave of 20. Probably 70 of them were TZ 750s. So we just turned around and sat. right? So here comes the pack. The pack, like three guys get through the horseshoe and are heading to, out of the horseshoe to head for the kink. And then there's like a group of 10 guys that come in, and then there's another group of 10 guys. Um, three guys crashed on the brakes. I mean, vertical, just tucked the front. Then another guy crashed in turn 5. Right? I mean, they didn't even get out of the infield. They threw a red flag. And Joe looks out over at me and he goes, "You know what? You'd have been one of those guys." And I went, "Yep." And it was right. So the guy saved my life. Gung ho you are. You going to ride? Go ride. You can't wait. So anyways, we got back, and the thing was already. I mean, it was just as it was when it finished second from the year before. Gearing, jetting, right? The air was, I guess, the same. And so I still remember my first couple of practice sessions going down the back straightaway and popping up to brake, and it almost pulled my head off. I mean, 190 miles an hour. I got radar in the morning warm up at 192, and Kenny was like 198. This is a long time ago. So everybody, people don't realize how fast we were going on those things. I mean, they weren't slow. So I ended up, I did, I don't know how many laps. I rode it all day Thursday and then all day Friday, and then Friday afternoon, I think, was qualifying. So basically they just, there's two groups, and I ended up 20th outside fifth. They had 5 back then. It was 5 across and they weren't staggered. So I'm outside 4th row. And I'm still 4 seconds off the front row though. Kenny, and I don't know how fast all the factory guys. I qualified top 20.
Yeah,
Which
that's
pretty
like
good.
yeah, it's like top 5 today because there's way less bikes on the grid.
Oh, there was, it wasn't like, like MotoGP where you got. I mean, even the guy that's 20th, if things change, if he finds that last 0.3 of a second, he can win. So there was always going to be the 4 guys with the fastest with the factory bikes, and you're not going to beat them, unless they break. So and then we didn't run. We ran no tire, no tire changes. You stop twice. We had a fueling mechanism that brings up gravity feed. You got a big tank up high with a 3-inch, dry brake that comes in the side of the tank. We practice, fuel stops. So you basically come in. There was no speed limit on the pit lane back then. That was crazy in itself. But you come down, and how we rehearsed it. You come down, and as you're just about to pull into your spot, there's somebody there with your number. So you get it in neutral, and you rev the engine with your hand off the handlebar. So the fueler guy knows that you're in neutral because you can't sit there with your holding the clutch in because your arm's in the way and they can't get the fuel thing in. So you pull in, you put your right foot down and push because he's got this big thing he's shoving into the side of the gas tank. And then while he's doing that, there's another fitting on the front of the tank with a guy with a hose with a catch bottle. So you just stare at that bottle. And as soon as the fuel starts shooting out of that, you're full of fuel. And he pulls out the hose. You get a crotch full of gas, whether you like it or not. And off you go. And that's same that you get. That's 2 fuel stops. So that's all you get. No drinks, no new tires. You ran that tire. If you had a tire problem, you're pretty much done because they had no quick change stuff. So you ran the same tire front for the whole 200 miles. So you had to ride the thing.
I should also mention that back then they had a lot of international riders come in, not like today where
That's where I'm
basically the
going.
AMA
So
guys.
I did the last. I didn't know where I was. I had no pit board. I just rode until I saw a checkered flag. I was just hoping I could. And then the last 10 laps, your feet are sleeping. You can't feel your hands. I mean, it's like you're done. I mean, I was I put on 10 pounds. I was only 140 pounds when I was riding the 250. And, Joe said, dude, you got to bulk up. You need to get some upper body strength. So I did back then I could do 100 sit-ups, 100 push-ups. I was doing reps with weights, 30 pounds, squats, and I could run 5 miles. I could do 10 miles, 5 miles down to Delray Beach and back on the beach. I ran on the beach. So I was, and still trying to be in the best shape I could be in. With 10 laps to go, I was done. So, like to say, getting to the international riders, I got my second fuel stop. And as I'm exiting back onto the track out of the pit lane, Jack Middelberg comes by me. He was there Jack Middelberg was the Netherlands. He was the master of Assen. And he's on an RG 500. And he was embarrassing me, and I'd stay with him. But my TZ was somebody, he had an RG 500. Heron's sponsored, I don't remember. It might have been one of Barry Sheen's old bikes, I don't know. But he was in such better shape. He would pull me, God, 5 or 6 bike lengths in the infield just to leave me. He was just better. The guy's a world champion, won, GPs. But we'd come out of 5 and hit the bank, and it says, okay, buddy, I got more, so I just drive by him down the back straightaway. He'd outbrake me. Sometimes, I'm peeling in, he just stuffs me up the inside. So we went back, and I have the honor of saying I got to race with Mr. Jack Middelberg, and I think we lost him, a few years back. But he came over. That's the first time. I nipped him at the line by a foot. So he got 19th, I got 18th. But he came over. I didn't even know who he was. I remember seeing Middelberg so I knew who he was, but I never seen his face. So it was probably like a half hour after the race. This guy comes up and introduces himself, and it was Jack. And hey, blah, blah, blah. We talked for like an hour. And true gentleman, dude. Unbelievable. And then I don't know what happened. I don't think he died in an accident or anything. I don't know what happened how he passed. Don't remember.
I'll have to look it up.
He was, that guy. I was, watching. The cool thing about it was I was a novice. I did okay on that thing. I got 9th, my first top 10 at Road Atlanta. I raced with Ted Booty, the ex-dirt tracker guy. He was riding. Ted was riding. He was a Jay Springsteen's mechanic. Springer's a teammate on the Factory Harlot dirt track team. But back then, when they separated the dirt track from the road race, he was riding who did he ride for? Can't remember now. But he was riding a private TZ. Don't remember who it was for. Phil McDonald, K&N Filters, the guy that started the K&N, Phil McDonald. So he married Phil McDonald's daughter, Ted did. So he had this ride. And that was my first top 10. It was me and him. The leaders got away. I don't know where I qualified, but it was me and Ted and Richard Chambers, who we all know and love. And we were going at it. Like for 10th, like it was for the MotoGP World Championship. That was the first time I ever got into like contact. Right. Not nothing really deliberate, but you know it is when you want to win. Who wants to win more?
Yeah.
Right.
So we got into lappers like with 5 or 6 laps to go, and he Richard got away from us. He got through traffic better, so he was probably 100 feet in front of us. We weren't going to catch him. So me and Ted went back and forth, and I remember going up the hill, up the hill to the top of the hill. You peel it in, all of a sudden he bumps you. It's like, you son of a bitch. You don't get mad because sometimes you get that rage, and suddenly you start riding like an idiot. So you got to keep yourself calm. So we went through the S's, went down the hill, and then the right hander at the end of the back straightaway, before you come onto the long back straight, he peels it, and I just drove it under. Remember looking back at him like, take that, right? So thinking that, like I'm tougher than you are. So this is before they had the little chicane at the end of they called it gravity cavity. You go down the hill, then you break back up, flat out 6th gear on one of these things, and you have to muscle it, then turn it to get under the bridge. So we went at it, we went at it, we went at it in the very last lap. And then they don't have that little 90-degree chicane like they have now. They have that fast right downhill fourth gear coming out of the front straightaway. It's hairball. So the very last lap, I passed him um, going into the coming out of the back straightaway. I went up the inside, so I'm leading. So it's like I'm just gonna go in deeper. So there's no way this guy's getting by me. So I probably got a little bit hot as as I'm coming up the hill, starting to turn in. I mean, he hit me hard, like shoulder to shoulder contact. So we both go wide. I still remember like it was yesterday. So as we're starting to come down the hill, that kink, that's fourth gear. You go second under the bridge, third, right as you peel it in, fourth. So he had an opening. Probably he was like he's starting to come down to the apex, and I'm already committed. And I stuck underneath him, and it was a huge bump. I thought he went. I mean, we hit so hard, I thought he crashed. I looked back over his shoulder because if you guys remember back then, there was like 10 feet. And, Benny Bostrom went off there back in the Superbike days on his Ducati, I think. And it was like you got like 10 feet of grass, hay bales, and a tire wall. There was no runoff. That's why they put that. That's why they changed the layout of the track. So I ended up beating him. I didn't know that I was ninth. So I got ninth. This was the first top 10. So I'm like on the cool off. I'm like this. I don't even want to turn my head because he's probably pretty pissed at me because that last move that I made was like aggressive. Probably one of the most aggressive moves I ever made. So we went up through the S's down the hill, and then coming onto the back straightaway. I just feel somebody just push with his hand. So he had taken his left hand off the handlebar, just shoved my shoulder, and I turned over, and he goes like this, right? He gave me the thumbs up. I thought it gets even better. We get back to the pits. I find out I'm top 10, my first top 10. That's pretty cool. There was like 32, 30, there was 30 of these things. So I'm back in my pits, starting to pack my stuff up, and here comes Ted. And he was they called him too tall. He was like 6'3" or 6'4". Here he comes walking, he's coming to see me, and it's like, oh shit, here we go. So first words out of my mouth was, I gotta apologize, right? I mean, right away, hey dude, sorry about that. Down. He goes, dude, don't worry about it. He goes, I think I returned the favor, right? And I says, yeah, sure did. He goes, Steve, this is nothing. He goes, you need to ride a mile dirt track. He goes, this is child's play. Right. He goes, you wouldn't even believe the shit that goes on a mile, like Sacramento or San Jose mile. And I've seen them before, but you don't really see a lot of it. How close these guys are. You've watched the races, how close these guys run to each other. So, anyways, that was kind of a bittersweet thing because that was 19. That was 81. And then 3 or 4 months later, he gets killed at Ascot at the last dirt track national of the year in Gardena, and I was there. I didn't see it happen, but he ran. Something happened coming to the checkered flag, and the bike went into a tank slapper and spit him off. And I don't know exactly what happened, but he hit one of the lighting poles or something. So after knowing this, I mean, I didn't know him that well, but I got to race with the guy, and then you see. This is like, I forget what part of it. I think Road Atlanta was like the middle of the season, and then the dirt track, he's still racing, full time for the Harley factory team. And then you see something like this. All I remember when I was there, because Ascot was, everybody went to Ascot, at the last AMA National. So I didn't know he died at the time. I just heard that, they took him off in an ambulance. And then you find out, this guy that I just, devastating, and it's kind of like, you think about it, why am I doing this? Sometimes you kind of question your sanity.
You know why? Because we're all here just temporary. So
yeah. So I've seen, I've seen a lot of instances where people that they work for a big giant company, and they have kids, they put the kids through college, and, all that's good. I mean, I'm not going to say anything bad about any of that stuff. and then they retire. They work for an aerospace company for they start when they're 25, right out of college, and they put in 35 or 40 years of being an accountant or something. And you know what? They got a nice house, blah 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 blah. And I kind of thought about that. Like before I went racing, I said, why don't I just do a normal job and just blah 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 blah. And then I thought about it. The more you get into motorcycles, and you guys will both know because you're both riders, I can't even imagine if I look back now, going through my entire life and not riding a bike.
Yeah.
Because all all this, you got that crazy Bimota with a Kerry Andrew motor.
No,
And
that's so the
have
Bimota.
you ridden it? Have you ridden it much or no?
The motor is actually stock. So the crazy and Carry Andrew motor is the G6R 1000 that I have,
Oh, okay. Oh, that's it. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
and
Okay.
and that is not just a crazy motor. The entire bike is crazy.
Yeah.
So he built the entire bike,
He did the suspension and
everything,
yeah.
everything. It's
It's funny when you start asking them questions about what you do, and it's like you just get that smile.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The
He won't
smile
give out
meaning
the secrets.
like none of your damn business, but he's happy to tell you. Yeah,
Like,
you
like,
never. I helped carry out a little bit. I worked with him when he was tuning for Jason. I kind of was helping him out when he'd get behind on engine builds, and I'd go up and give him a hand. But I've known Kerry, God, since the '80s. Yeah, he's just finally retired.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think my bike was the last.
Have you spoken to him or no?
Yeah,
No.
I think my bike was the
Did
last big project he
did
completed.
he do I think he bought some property out somewhere near Willow, didn't he, in Palmdale? Somebody's
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
what I heard.
I think
Yeah,
so.
I know JJ, from Suspension Matters.
Yeah.
JJ bought his dyno. Talked to him a
Okay.
couple of weeks.
He
About
he he
Kerry's
did the
dyno.
suspension for my bike. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, JJ. Oh yeah, he knows what he's doing, dude. Yeah, we had a shock issue. The shock on Sean's TZ started to get a little bit of a leak. Anytime you take a belly pan off of a TZ 250, there should be any oil, right? Motor oil. So we pulled it off, and it's like this, but it smelled weird. So he had just gone through the shock. JJ did. We'd send it to him. I was doing all this stuff, but my eyes being in the condition they are, and I just don't trust myself anymore. So the guy sent it to him. He knows what he's doing. He takes stuff apart. He replaced the shock shaft seal. So he did that. We went to a race. Sean, what race did we go to when the shock sprung a leak and we had to go back to JJ?
Oh, that was here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. It was oh yeah. It was yeah. It came out here. Yeah, yeah.
Chuckwalla.
Came out here just to do some testing.
Okay.
So then Sean pulls the lower off. He goes, dude, there's oil everywhere, and I'm looking, and where does you gonna get engine oil like out of the transmission oil? Is the only place you're gonna get it. And then we finally looked, and you can see on the very bottom of the shock, there was it was dripping, and it was suspension oil, and he had just done the shock.
It's
So
funny
we're
how
track,
technology goes because
right?
my
So
last Gixxer was a
yeah, so
K6. My last Gixxer was a K6 and the suspension was Linderman did it, Jim Linderman.
oh Jim, oh yeah,
Yeah,
God,
yeah. And it
another
was
one of the best. Yeah,
yeah, it was the front. The front was at a cartridge, the rear was a Penske. And I thought you cannot get any better in suspension. And then I got the new Gixxer where the rear was Öhlins and then the front had the entire cartridge of Öhlins in it. And I was like,
it's amazing.
I guess technology does move forward.
It was so
Nice.
anyways, get with JJ, so we're getting ready, we're leaving, like we're on our way back to because we just we had a fresh engine, the TC, so we just came out of Chuckwalla, track experience guys, and just put laps, put 100 miles on the engine before you go all the way back to the East Coast. And then we were slated to leave like the following Tuesday for a trip to, I think it was New Jersey. So we're at the track. We're still out here at the track, and there's oil and it's leaking. So I called this Sunday, like at probably 4 o'clock in the afternoon or something. I called JJ from here from the track. Picks up the phone. I says, dude, that we got something with the shock. Um, it's I don't know where it's coming from, but there's suspension oil. I can smell it. And this is like, okay, bring it to the shop. I'll meet you down at the shop. Let me know when you get, So we Googled, we're an hour, 2 hours away or whatever the heck it was, because he's off up in the Azusa, 210 and the 60, I think. No, 210 and anyway, he's in Azusa. So from the time we get packed up and loaded up, we drove right to his shop and unloaded the TZ, took the shock off. I don't know what it was. He made a mistake or something. Who knows? Bad part. I didn't even ask. I handed him the shock. I didn't even go in there. I left him alone. I know he's taking it back apart again. And he came down on a Sunday. It was, to open the shop up just to make, because we're coming there because I had to get it fixed. The shock was still working. That was the weird thing. It was nothing. There's just oil coming from somewhere. I don't know if it's the seal, or who knows. And to this day, I don't even know what it was. I didn't ask him. Who cares? It doesn't matter, right? So an hour and a half, we pull the shock off. He's in there in his building room, and I don't know what he did. He hands it back to me, apologizes, sorry, man. I said, hey, it's all good. So we put it back on the bike. He didn't change any of the settings because we already had it. He put it right back to where it was, because I measured free length of the spring. I was, those TZs, if you get them to turn off on the spring, they're not fun. They're good when they're right, but when they're not right, they're not fun. So I got a lot of respect for that guy, dude. He's a good friend of mine. I've known him forever. And at the point now where if I start getting into any suspension stuff now, or somebody brings me a bike, and I just sent him a friend of mine who's Ramon. He's got a Ducati V4S, and he wanted to go with Olin's, and they got that electronic stuff, right? Give me something with some clickers and some preload adjusters. I'm not a big fan of that stuff, and he wasn't either. So we got some other cartridges and a TTX shock, and I told him what springs to get, and then I called JJ and I go, "Is this the spring that we think we should run?" He goes, "Yeah." So we got the cartridges in and got the shock in. I put the shock on, yeah, and then he went up to JJ's, and JJ put all the stuff in, and gave him a good price, right? So he was supposed to bring it to me because even though JJ set it up, I've set up a lot of this guy's bikes, and I said, when you get it back from JJ, bring it to me so I can do the fine tune. But I haven't heard from him, so I don't know if he's actually ridden it, or this has got to be, gosh, 2 or 3 months ago, I'm thinking. So he probably hasn't. He's got a really really nice car detail place, high end cars detailing.
Okay.
So he's probably because there's no way he's going to ride the thing first. I've worked on a lot of his bikes, and he won't even go out unless I check to make sure it's in the ballpark.
Well, that electronic suspension. I mean, it's great for the road because if you go on a bumpy road, all of a sudden, it changes the settings
Oh
on the
yeah, I mean,
car.
and that's what it's intended for, right? I
Mhm.
mean, they're not building street legal race bikes,
Yeah.
so it's easier to change. You just get on the computer and do whatever you want, and there's not a lot of adjustment. I think it's kind of like soft, medium, and hard, but that's fine.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
the street
And,
bike
and,
guys.
and you see on their R versions, the Superbike version, not the 1100, they put regular suspension. They don't put that electronic stuff on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I ended up I got ninth at Road Atlanta. Um, and then let's see, I did Loudon. I think I finished out of the top 10. That's the old Loudon. That place is busy. It's a handful for a 750. It's not really a TZ 750 track.
So how many years in total did you race?
I only rode it. I only rode. So I rode the 250s for what 3 years, and then took 2 years off to help Henry with his tune the 750. And then I raced the TZ in '81, and I did Daytona, Loudon, Rode Atlanta. I can't remember where else. I did 5 races. Oh, Brainerd. And I can't remember the other one. I did 5 races.
And
Daytona.
then you were like, yeah, I can
And
either spend money.
I got my best finish because this thing was such a rocket ship. It was so fast. It was almost embarrassing how fast you could go by guys. Even the regular TZs. It's like you go by them and you have to draft them. It's like God. So I went to after Road Atlanta because I finished. Anyway, I got a really good start in the heat race and was running third. There were 5 lappers, and I was running third. I remember going down the front straight, and you make the right hander to go down the hill. I remember looking over my shoulder, and they were fourth place. Was like, wasn't going to catch me on the white flag lap. So I was going to see first and second for each heat. It's going to be on the front row because there was 4 per row, right? So I was third, so I was going to be on the second row. So I go down the hill and go to the next right hander to head back, the other way, the other return straightaway. You've been around the track. Shut off on 2 cylinders. I lost 2 cylinders. It went from a 750 to a
250.
to a 350 or whatever. 375 or whatever.
Uh,
It's like lost 2 cylinders. It's like shit. White flag lap. I went from third to 14th. Stator, they have like pulsar coils. It fires 2 cylinder. You got 2 pulsar coils on the ignitions, and they're notorious because you got that left pipe that comes around. It's really close to the stator, so I just lost spark on 2 cylinders. So I went from third to 14th.
yeah.
So it's like here we go again, like Daytona. Breaking the damn springs. Like come on, give me a break here. So I knew what it was because in the spares kit there was 2 brand new stators in boxes. So obviously they have issues with them. So I put the other stator back on. Of course, it started right up on all 4 cylinders. Set the ignition timing 1.8 static, blah 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 blah. And I called Joe. I was calling him on the payphone. The guy that owns the bike, Biganski, and he says, "Okay, here's what you got to do." He says you won't make the race on 1 tank of fuel. I mean, if you don't top off, because it's 4 miles, wow.
Yeah.
So have your mechanic, and I had a helper guy that week. Got a buddy named Stan. He says get him like a 1-gallon gas can, mix up another gallon, and as you're coming up on your warm up lap, you go up to your starting position, but before the pit splits off. So I have it there on the side of the track. And the gas cap was a pop-up cap. You push a button and the thing pops open.
Yeah.
Lean it over to the left and fill until it runs out. And bigger, and it was full on the warm-up lap, but it had dropped quite a bit. So I lean it over. I start the close the cap off and went to my starting position, 9th row, 28th on the grid. I rode. And here's the other thing. That was the first race because tires were $100 a set. That's a lot of money. It was 40 for a front and 60. The bike for your warm up lap, you're somebody. I mean, they look at you like, "Ooh, you got new tires." So I knew I was going to try to head to the front. But I knew I needed to know I had new tires. You know what I'm saying? You've been on, you've been on bikes plenty of times when things working fine.
It's
right?
mentally. It's mentally. You need to know you have the right
Psychological,
tires.
yeah.
So when you have a new set of tires, even though the other ones were working, it's knowing that you have new rubber.
Yes.
You ride it different.
Yes.
Right? I mean, they're probably not working any better than what was on there, but because they're, especially the front, I don't give a shit about the rear, but the front. So I think I might have left a little early, but they didn't have guys on the line like they did. I thought I was going to get the beat flag because I probably probably, I'm not saying I left early. I didn't give a shit. What do I got to lose? So I'm just going through, the closing speed. See, when you're towards the back of the grid, you got bikes that are considerably slower than yours. And I can remember coming up on guys, so quick. And if they move over, I'm going to end up dying. So I finally got, I don't know where I was. I didn't know, you don't have a pit board. You just ride till you see the checkered flag. So, here, white flag lap. Come on, baby. There's a couple of bikes probably 100 feet in front of me. But I was catching them. And then I took the checkered flag. The next lap, I hope I'm, maybe inside the top 10. I was hoping, right? So, cool off, get to the carousel, which is about as far away from the pits as you can go. Runs out of gas. I wouldn't have made it if I hadn't topped off, right? So, there's stranded bikes all over the place. After the race, you got bikes, a lot of mechanical stuff. So back in the day, they had a 30-minute protest. So from the checkered flag, it was 30 minutes before the results became official, right? In case somebody there's a 30-minute filing if you wanted to file a protest. So by the time they got to me to pick up, it was well past half an hour, right? So I remember sitting back in the truck and then getting back to my pits. And as I pulled back into the pits, there was a guy with me. He goes, "You got seventh."
You built lots of machines in your day. I know you built Nick's machines. You built the CR 500.
Oh yeah, that supermoto bike. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
What?
that was cool. Yeah.
What's your favorite? What's your favorite machine and why?
Um, I tell you what I did. I had a friend of mine who was down in Cardiff. His name's, believe it or not, James Stewart, and there was an RGV street bike that I think they only sold in Europe, and it was
250?
250 RGV, and it was the Lucky Strike version. And instead of being the 45-degree, V twin, it was a 60-degree. And they were
Yeah,
very,
50,
very rare. There weren't many of them. They had forced air, they had pressurized air boxes.
yeah, it was like 50 something horsepower.
Yeah, they were pretty good.
Yeah.
So this guy got everything was like, I think the kits were Sugo, made by a Japanese company. So the guy, his name was James, good friend of mine. He actually bought at the end of the year when we'd get done with the TZs, I could either give them back to Yamaha or I could sell them. And so, for whatever their cost was, I can't really give those numbers out, but he bought one and just was doing track days on it. But he had this RGB and he got the Sugo pipes and the ECU, and I think it was the cylinders, heads, reed bobs, bigger carbs, ECU, a different harness. I never really got into any of that stuff. It's something that that reprogrammed the oil pump for the oil injection where it pumped more. I mean, there was a lot of really neat stuff. So I put that thing together. And then, of course, you get them together, then you got to get them jetted right. You try to do as much of it with your ear as you can. And, you're taking it out on the street. And this thing was not, the pipes were not street legal. This thing was loud. I was just waiting to get busted by somebody. So I finally got it done. And Jim took it to Chuck Graves. This is back in, when he was first starting to do his stuff. And they dialed it with 72 horsepower.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So that's a 20% increase, 30% increase.
And I didn't, I did a little bit, just little things on the cylinders. I mean, it was all kit stuff. So I just had to basically get it together, but you got to get the deck numbers right. They had different thickness base gaskets, to get the numbers where you wanted it, as far as they wanted like 0.5 something on the deck numbers for the squish clearance. And, on two strokes, that stuff's really important. And then, we did the ignition timing. And I remember when I finally rode it, it was pretty impressive, 72 horsepower. And even Chucky, when we took it to Chuck's, he just put it on the dyno. He didn't do, I don't think he had any exhaust gas temperature stuff. But he called, Jim called me back up and said, "Dude, 72." And I was hoping for 60. because they were like 50. I
Wow.
think they were 55 or something,
50, yeah.
right?
It was the low 50s, and I think I heard it shared a lot of components with the RS 250 with the
Right,
Aprilias.
exactly. Yeah. So as far as and then there's another. I could send you a picture later on. I had a friend of mine named Mike Dadarian. He was when I was living in Lawndale, and he bought a '91 TZ, and we turned it into a street bike. And yeah, Jim Granger put the same, the yellow and white and black paint job that Nicky's '91 had, and we did a. I put a headlight, projector beam headlight, a tail light. We just ran total loss battery. Um, and it was a '91, so it had the bigger flywheel. The earlier TZs had, the '93 or '94 and up. They went to a tiny flywheel, so this had the kind of like not as big as the TZR. So I just lowered the cylinders down as far as I could go. All kinds of positive deck, cut the heads for the clearance. Um, put some stiff reed pedals like you want,
Yeah.
for bottom end and acceleration. And when we got done with it, because he had to get it licensed. So we got it all done because it had a 17-digit VIN number. So this is before the DMV was cracking down on stuff. So I remember loading it in the back of his truck, and I went over to the DMV so they could, do the what do they do? Some kind of a VIN check or something.
Yeah.
So the guy that he comes outside, you make an appointment, he comes out, looks at it, and you know what? He didn't even know what it was. So we said it's an RD 350, and so he didn't recognize the prefix on the VIN, which is 3YL. He didn't. He never seen that. Well, where are the turn signals? Well, it didn't come with turn signals. Oh, okay. So we had it to where I had a brake light switch hooked up to the to the master cylinder, a rear brake light switch, on off handlebar switch for the lights, and I had a bunch of gearbox parts left over. That stuff that you never really use because we had the factory gearbox kit. So I put a super low first, so you can get away from a light. We never ran low first, so I had all these these extra gearbox ratios, and then got second, third, and fourth, second, third, fourth, and fifth really close together. Put a short fifth, a short, you know,
Yeah.
and tall second, tall third, short fourth, short fifth to get the gear because those are the gears you're going to be in when you're up Angeles Crest Highway, and then a tall six for the freeway.
Hmm.
So we never, we did the mileage numbers, and there's no way you're going to get all the way up to Newcomb's and back on one tank of gas. So we would we'd put it in a truck and go to the gas station, the Shell station at the base of Angeles Crest, and then ride it up to Newcomb's because you had enough fuel to get up to Newcomb's and back again. And I can still remember the first time all we had was a triangle stand because I didn't put a side stand, so we kept the triangle stand in the back in our backpack. And Mike and I would go up. Um, I'd go up there in the truck, and he'd ride it up there, and I'd show up like a half hour later with the truck if we needed fuel, and then we switched. He rode the truck back, and I rode it down the hill. So we did that a couple of times. I think he sold it, but that was like and the thing was, um, it was you couldn't it had a quarter-inch foam pad seat, so you're not going to ride this thing more than an hour. You're not going to ride all the way up to Angeles Crest and then up that hill. Your butt won't survive. I don't care, right? As harsh as that thing was. And I remember, putting light springs in it, suspension wise. And there's a picture. I've got a picture. I'll send it to you guys when I get a chance. And I don't know if Mike, I haven't talked to him in a while. He's got to be close to 80 now. But I think, Jim Granger painted it, Russ Granger's dad. And I don't know. It's a toss up between that and the RGV. I think the RGV was actually more fun because it was more comfortable, probably. Yeah.
Hmm.
So anyway, yeah.
Just one side note for the listeners. The reason why two strokes are so rad is because every time the piston goes up, when it goes down, it's a power stroke.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's got twice the power strokes that a regular
Right.
four-stroke
Yeah.
engine has.
Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember, back in the day when they were, involved with all the 500 stuff, and when Nicky and I would go up to Bud Axelin's once in a while to get some dyno stuff done, and we'd walk in. I remember going in there once when we went up there in '96. We built that TZ Street bike. I know, the one that Nicky's got. So we took it up to Kenny's place in '96 and had him do power wheelies up and down his driveway for a half an hour taking photos. So I known Kenny, talked to him a few times, but never had actually had to spend time with the guy. And he wrote it. I guess they knew we were coming with it, right? So we get there. It's just Kenny. Half hour later, Curtis shows up. Another half hour, Kenny Jr. shows up. Another half hour later, I wish I had Nicky here. I think Bubba Schobert showed up. Doug Chandler shows up. So they're all jumping on this thing, right? And we didn't ride it really, really hard, because we got the thing, it was a big pile of shit. We had to go through the crank, and I had to, you hard to find parts for it. And I kind of jetted it conservatively, but Nicky and I never rode it hard. So I guess they have some, 3 or 4 mile loop that goes around the ranch, and it's in the middle of nowhere if you've ever been to Kenny's ranch, and you can hear this thing, and they're just beating. I'm just gotta hope this thing doesn't blow up. I mean, they're hammering on it. Curtis got on it. He's like, you can hear it just, going to 12 grand. He beat on it. Kenny Jr. beat on it. And I guess third guy beat on it and ran out of gas. We had to go fetch him and bring him back because we got to put gas in it. And then that was when I don't know if you guys remember the bike that Kenny rode a while back, a demo of the 500 on the
The yellow one?
yellow one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We got there because we had our '96 TZ because they wanted to do some baseline numbers. Bud did. That was the first year when they made the chassis change. So we were just up there. I remember we showed up the night before, and Bud did all the work. We're at Kenny's place first. The first night, I hung out with Kenny, and I still remember. The next day we would take the bike. We get our bike, usually earlier than anybody else did. We got the pre-production model for the TZ, so we got to go to Bud's and we do all the baseline stuff. So we, get all that stuff out of the way. So we're at Kenny's place the first night, and he rode the TZ and all that stuff. We had a barbecue, and then they broke out the XRs like 10 o'clock at night for like I said, some of the craziest stuff. I wouldn't get involved in that no matter what. So then, as we're getting ready to leave, and we're spending the night, we got a hotel. Nick and I got a hotel somewhere, and the next day we're supposed to go to Bud's. So Kenny says, "You want to bring in 1 gallon?" This is a true story. If Bud sees this, he's gonna laugh. He goes, "You want a gallon of whole milk, not skim milk, not low fat, and 2 bags of Chips Ahoy cookies." With the reopening things. So we went to the grocery store that morning and showed up. It's a big Quonset. I don't know if you've been to. You don't even know it's a factory Yamaha where he does all the dyno stuff. It's him and Brian Turfree. So we walk in. We got the TZ unloaded. And you see I'm carrying the gallon of milk, and Nicky's got 2 bags of Chips Ahoy cookies. And Bud goes, "Oh, I guess you talked to Bud. To Kenny." So, anyways, long story short, we were there. We went after the dyno stuff. We went back to Kenny's, and inside of one of his barns he pulls the cover off. There's a '79 World Championship Works 500 sitting on dry rotted Goodyears. The 7-spoke Morris mags. It was just all cracked. The fairing had some cracks. The windscreen was cracked, and it hasn't run. For a while, after he rode the TZ 750, Kenny ran up and down the driveway. We're looking at that bike, and when he first showed it to us, oh yeah, Yamaha's, it's missing some parts. They cut the throttle cables. They didn't want him to ride it again for whatever reason. So he's been sitting in his barn, rusting away. So I remember Nicky looking at Kenny and remember him, he'll tell you if he was here. He goes, Steve and I could get that thing running for you. And Kenny just kind of, I remember the look on his face. He just kind of like rolled his eyes like, yeah, sure. Like, I'm going to turn this thing loose to you guys. Right. So then, I don't know, a couple hours went by. I don't know what else we were doing. And then Kenny and I were all sitting around. And then next thing I hear Kenny comes over, looks at me, and he goes, where would it be stored? Where would it be? I says, my house in Lawndale, and my condo in Lawndale. He goes, is it secure? And I says, yeah. I mean, I got, when you pull the door down, because I used to keep Nicky's TZs in there, I got these 1/2-inch diameter, steel, foot-long pieces of steel that go through the 2x4s of the door into the concrete. I mean, you're not getting this door open, period, unless you get inside. So he's always one question leads to another. Next thing you know, we're loaded in the back of the box van. And I remember as we're driving back, and there's Kenny's, had the #1 champion spark plug sticker, Bell Ray sticker. It's all cracked and rotted, and the triple clams had a crack. The upper triple clam had a crack in it. So he wants us to get it running. So I started, we took it apart. The radiator, I remember pulling the radiator cap and draining the water, and it smelled like seawater. I mean, this thing had, the radiator was junk. It was just rusted solid. And I remember pulling the motor out, and I went to pull the feed hose. The water pump's in the bottom of the engine, like in the middle of the motor. The pump's like on the bottom of the motor. It's some kind of a drive gear that drives it. But the main feed hose off the radiator goes to the water pump underneath. I remember loosening the clamp, and this is all magnesium stuff. So as I go to pull the hose off, the spigot on the water pump just crumbles into like dust because it's magnesium. I was like, oh, shit. So I finally got the motor out and pulled the heads off, and it was rusty. They ran, back in the day, they were running a 747, which is Castro, and it doesn't have any rust inhibitors in it. So I pulled the heads and the cylinders. The cranks were brown. The cases are, the water pump's junk. There was some other things wrong with it. Carburetors are okay. So I called Kenny. I said, and I sent him, I didn't send him pictures. We didn't have cell phones, but I said, the water pump is just crumbling. The spigot's crumbling because it's all magnesium. The radiator's junk. And I said, you sure you want to do it? He said, I'll do it. If you can come up with the parts. And I said, where are you going to find? So this is back when he was doing that V5. Remember, Kenny had that V5 product, that 5-cylinder MotoGP thing, and he was based out of Banbury, England. So he says, "Okay, put it in a crate. There's a couple of guys going to come by and pick it up." So some guys picked it up and they shipped it over to England. And about, God, it wasn't that long, maybe 6 weeks, not 2 months, between 6 weeks and 2 months later, I get a crate shows up. 2 crates actually, a bunch of parts. A brand new ignition rotor and stator, a brand new water pump. The whole engine had been taken down, and cases were all vapor blasted. Everything was brand new. It had new cranks, new water pump, all new. 3 of the 4 cylinders were new. The heads were all new. So somehow they located. And the thing was, I remember I'd never heard of vapor blasting before, but the cases looked like brand. If you ever seen what vapor blasting does, the engine looked like it's freshly out of a crate. It had a new stator. Then there was another box with a brand new radiator, all brand new hoses, and this is all the stock factory. I don't know where he found this stuff.
Either found it or made it.
Yeah. What's that?
He either found it or he made it.
Either found it or had it made. Yeah.
He had an entire factory in there for those bikes.
And then a bunch of extra gaskets and like all new radiator hoses, a new radiator. I had to go through the carburetors, and then I called up because they had cut the cables. and with wire cutters right coming out of the housing. Back then there were four separate cables on a big. So I pulled, all the cables were the same, but two of them, they only cut two of them. So I pulled the cables out, and then I measured them, and I called up Mike Taylor from Barnett because he was sponsoring Nikki and I, the clutch guy, and he makes cables. So I put him in the, piled them up, stuck them in a bag, and mailed them to him, and he sent me back four of the most beautiful throttle cables. So we got that going. Put it, clean that. Scrub the frame by hand, with steel wool and WD-40, and got it to where it looked good.
Yeah.
And then who did we send the forks and the shock to?
Linderman.
Because it had these external fluid lines. And at the bottom legs were billet. And it had some of these like oil lines that were external that would come from the top of the fork leg down to the bottom. I had no clue. And of course, it's a monoshock, it had the long shock under the frame. And it was all leaky and sticky and everything else. And it's like, I called Jim. I says, "Can you rebuild this?" He goes, Jim was, "Yeah, no problem. Put it in the box." So, like 2 weeks later, and he cleaned everything up, and then I put them back on. And then we set the wheels were 7-spoke Morris mags. Remember those?
Yeah.
So we sent him to Granger, Jim Granger. And I don't know what he did, but he, that gold color that they came with was like a dark, beautiful gold color. They came back all painted, looked brand new. I don't know what he did. We got the brakes. That was the only problem that we had when we got it done. Is I had to go. I went through the brakes myself, and there were these weird little aluminum calipers, and then the rotors had the slots in them. Remember those? Yep. So like from the inside all the way out, like they were slotted. So anyway, I did the best I could with the brakes. And I took everything apart. I don't know where I got to rebuild kits, but anyways, got that all back together. Sandblasted and painted the pipes, repacked the silencers myself. Drilled out the rivets. It had these little. It wasn't carbon fiber, but it was something almost like carbon fiber. Got everything all done and started right up. I couldn't believe it. The only tires we could find in 18-inch were Avons.
Oh, I remember those.
Avon street tires because everything was.
Does that company still exist?
There are no Goodyear slicks anymore. So we found some Avon street tires and put it on. And then that was 2000. By the time we got done with it, it was 19, it was 2000. It took us like 3 years to do this whole project.
Where's that bike now? Do you know?
It's over I heard it was over. I don't know. I think it's at the museum in Barber now. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that was the year, if you remember, that Curtis Roberts won the championship. It's a true story.
On the Suzuki.
He won the Ariat Honda. He won the 600 Super Stock, and he won that last lap pass at Willow Springs, where the last lap he goes around 3 guys on the turn 9, and he won the championship.
When did Junior won the MotoGP championship? Was it 2000
that was
or
2000? Okay, well, he won it. Junior won it, I think, Rossi won in 2001. So Rossi's first year on it was 2000, and I think that's when Junior won. So Junior won his world championship the same year Curtis won the 600 Superstock title. That was back that last race that he won. I still remembered I was there helping some guy, and you had Duhamel, you had Jamie Hacking, you had Eric Bostrom, Miguel Duhamel, all these guys, and when the place was packed full of people, and I still remember it was a 20-lapper, and these guys, there was a pack 8, 10 deep the whole race. I mean, these guys were. This is when it was DOT tires still, no slicks, and carburetors. They hadn't come out with fuel injection yet.
And it was 750s.
Curtis broke the lap record. He did it high 21. High 21 or high 22, something. But he was. I think
it was 750s and the Ducati 916.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyways, So we got the bike. So we got the bike finished, and they had the AMA Awards banquet at the Flamingo Hilton in Vegas. And Kenny didn't know that the bike was done. We didn't, Curtis knew, Kenny knew, everybody else knew, but somehow they kept it from Kenny. So Kenny's not a big, never was a big fan of the AMA, but the AMA come up with some stupid lifetime achievement award that they're going to give him. So that was like the last, they got all, it was, I think Benny Bostrom won the Superbike titles. All the Honda guys were there. I remember Ludington being, all these Honda guys, they get the front row, when you win the, I remember all the, Joey Lombardo, all the guys at Honda are all drunk. It was like, it's the end of the evening. So the very last award was the Kenny Roberts, getting this Lifetime Achievement Award. So Nikki and I brought the bike to the track, to the had it full of fuel and already started up and it ran. So we had it all timed out when they had a curtain. We were back behind the curtain. Kenny had no idea we were there with the bike. It's a true story. I think that was the year Roland Sands won the 250 championship too, I think. Anyways, everybody's pretty twisted, drinking because it's, it was the AMA Awards banquet. So Kenny stands up and they give him the big trophy and they give him a big standing ovation. And they open up the curtains open up. We push the bike in behind him and he doesn't even know it's me. It's behind him. And it's like, so now you hear, I think it was Ludington. I hope he sees this. It's like, now you're hearing everybody, and it's red carpet on the stage. So you hear, start it up. And it's like, Kenny looks over me and he goes, no, this isn't going to be not going to be good. And then I think it was Ludington. I hear you, and he yells out really loud, you ain't got the balls to start that thing up. Wrong. Kenny looks over at me. He goes, well, start. I go, yeah, we just warmed it up. So he puts it in first gear. We back it up all the way like 25, 30 feet back. Pumps it, fires up, and just held the thing wide open. Filled the whole place full of smoke. We were laughing our asses off, dude. And that was pretty cool. And then the following day, Freddie Spencer was still running his school in Vegas, at the Vegas track.
Yeah.
So he wanted to ride it. Kenny wanted to ride the thing, right? Because, we got it all done. Even though it had you want to ride it with these tires? He goes, hell yeah, I don't give a shit. So I still remember he wore his yellow stuff, the Eagle stuff, and his yellow Yamaha leather is just like, he's a little tight. They were a little tight, but so he rode it like he goes out for the very first practice or just a few laps, just to figure it out. Nicky and I are just sitting there just going, we just died, went to heaven, dude. Here he is, Kenny and Freddie. And it was just me and him and Kenny and Freddie just sitting there. And there was a couple other guys there. So he does like 3 or 4 laps, and all of a sudden you see a big cloud of dust in the very back section of the track, and I go, shit, he crashed the fucking thing. Excuse my language. And he comes flying back. And Nicky's, God's my, he says, he comes flying back into the pits. He looks at me and he goes, well, you got the brakes right, because they still don't work. I guess the brakes didn't work, right? They were new pads. They just needed to work. They ended up working okay. So he's like, give me a screwdriver. And there was like 5 adjustments, like 2 adjustments on the top of each fork leg, and one on the middle and one on the bottom. And he starts shoving on the forks. And I didn't really know what I was, I didn't know anything about these forks or where to set them up. And Jim set them up, probably just guessing. So he starts, shoving and clicking, just like I do. Just do it by feel. He's pushing and he give me a blah, blah, blah. Give me a 14 to put more preload. He's cranking on the preload. Starts pushing and clicking. He goes, okay, hold on to the front. We take the gas tank off because there's all the adjustments. You get, the gas tank shocks on the tank. Take off the gas, lift up the tank. So he's pushing on the back and lifting and pushing. Put 2 turns of spring in it. It was like yesterday. Like he'd already, the day before. Pushes on it again. He goes, okay, puts the tank back on, goes back out. probably about 3 or 4 more laps when the brakes came in. He's going to this U-turn in right in front of the track.
Yeah.
He's with these 81 street tires coming out of the corner, whoop, spinning it up and leaving black marks, and it's just like, holy sweet Jesus! Like, yeah, I was impressed.
Yeah,
I was,
that's turn one, right?
yeah, it's turn one. Yeah, so you've
Yeah.
been to Vegas? Yeah, yeah,
I live in Vegas.
yeah, yeah. So he, we did it like five, probably put about another 10 laps on it. Then Nick and I are just standing there watching, and we're just like, life can't get any better than this. And the highlight of that was Kenny walks up to me, still had his helmet on. He puts his hand on my shoulder, like sincerely, and he looks at me straight in the eye and goes, "Thanks, dude. That's the coolest fucking thing I've done in a long time." Then we got to see him do wheelies at Laguna like later on that year. And I don't know, like I say, I don't know where the bike is now.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was a neat experience. That was 3 years of ass busted work, and he tried to give me money. I wouldn't take a nickel. We didn't charge him anything. Jim didn't charge us anything to paint the wheels. I mean, to do the suspension. Right? You know why? Because that's what you do.
Yeah.
Somebody like him.
Camaraderie. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a good
So,
story.
yeah. Good.
All right. Now we have suspension questions for you. So you have a company called
Hmm.
called
On track.
On Track Suspension.
Hmm.
And when I first approached you, the first thing I asked is, "Hey, can we do an episode about suspension?"
Right. Yeah.
And then it turns out you have all those great stories. So we went through that great stories.
Thanks
But
for.
yeah, but now we have to, or we should talk about suspension because
Yeah.
that's what you do
So
these days.
let me. So what I'm really doing now, not really much. I basically all my experience kind of was geared around Grand Prix bikes, the bikes that weigh 250 pounds. I never really got into any of the super stock bikes. Never really messed with them until it was like 2019. My buddy Whitney Blakesley, he used to own Champion Honda Yamaha back in the 80s and 90s, and he bought a 2018 600 R6 and picked up the phone. He hadn't ridden anything. He's like, why don't I just do track days again after not riding a bike for 30 something years? I think it was mid 70s at the time. I was like, I think he just turned 80. Anyway, so he buys an R6, and Whitney's like 140 pounds, little dude. So he buys an R6 and then orders a cartridge kit. And my buddy Eric Gray, who works at Gustin Motorsports down in Costa Mesa, they order the shock. He just bolts the shock on. He orders, cartridge kit from Allens. I don't know who he got it from. I think it was Kyle Racing or whoever got it. So she starts doing track days. And he says, do this thing. I don't know it's me, if I forgot to ride and forgot how to ride. I mean, last bikes he run around Willow was a KZ1000 in like 1979. And he had the lap record. He did 29s on that thing way, way back in the day. So anyway, so he does, I don't know. I don't remember exactly the number of track days, but he does like 3 or 4 track days at 3 different tracks. And he says, this thing is just, I feel like I'm going to crash straight up and down. It's so bad. So I didn't know at the time until later. So he goes, I guess the one track day had some suspension guy. I wasn't even doing this stuff back then. I was just, I forget what I was actually doing this for a living. But anyway, so he goes to some track and some guys allegedly set it up. And no better. I don't know whether it's worse, no better. I don't know who it was. Doesn't really matter. But he does another track day organization, somebody else, and they got a suspension guy. So he turns them loose on it. Nothing, still destroying tires. It's like he's got an inch and a half of unused fork travel on the front end. So then he goes to a third guy somewhere, same thing. They can't get anything better. So this is when I first started helping Brady Walker classic track days. And he wasn't really, he didn't really want a lot of sport bike guys. He wants to keep it, all classic stuff. But he'll take your money. So Whitney, not knowing it was me, and I've known Whitney forever. when I worked at Beach Home on Huntington Beach, we'd go to Costa Champion Honda all the time to get Honda parts. So I knew who he was, him and Lee Fleming. Those guys were fast boys back in the 80s, late 70s. Anyway, so he hears that Brady Walker's got some suspension guy, not knowing it's me. Right? He just shows up. Him and Eric had a ZX10, and Whitney shows up with his R6. Oh, so you're the suspension guy. I say, hey, dude, I give him a hug. I hadn't seen you in a long time. He goes, dude, I've had this thing to 3 different guys, and it's scary to ride. Are they like this? I mean, the bikes like this now? And I says, dude, they're like works bikes compared to the shit you rode. So I didn't know. I knew the spring numbers and what they came with. So I looked down at the shock, TTX. He's got a 10-0 spring on that thing. And Whitney's 140 pounds soaking wet. Right? And a 10-0 spring, a 9-0 spring is too stiff. It's not gonna work. So then I grab the brakes like I always do and shove on something, because if you don't have the feel, I'm sorry, I'm not bashing anybody, but I learned just by shoving on stuff. And then a lot of people say you can't do it that way. I don't know how else I don't know any other way to do it. It's just, if you don't have that feel when you're pushing on it, then do something. Don't do suspension, because you can't rely on numbers. If you can't push on something that tell you it needs another 2 clicks of rebound, then all you can do is hurt somebody, guys. You're gonna hurt somebody. So I looked down, it's got 10-0 spring, and it probably had 10-0 springs in the forks. And Eric Gray from Custom Motorsports, he doesn't know. And a lot of guys don't know. He just put on what the guy sent him. So I know, why would they send stock springs, or I don't remember what they were on a Yamaha back then, but it's probably something around 9s, a 90. And you got to remember, what people don't realize is that bike came with passenger foot pegs.
Okay, that's why.
So anything that's made now, back 20 years, this is where people get it wrong all the time. Anything that's got to pay, even your BMW and your Ducati, the V4s, if they come with passenger foot pegs, they're sprung for a rider and a passenger.
Yeah, not only that, but the linkages are not made for one rider.
Exactly. Yeah. So why someone generally, most of the bikes nowadays are, like I said, if it's got a passenger foot peg, it's sprung for a rider and a passenger, and they're not necessarily heavier springs. They just got a bunch preload in them.
Yeah.
Right. So, and Eric doesn't know. So I said, look, go call up the guy that's saying the suspension that sold you this stuff and tell me you need 8.0 springs, 8.5s maybe, or maybe an 8.0 and an 8.5, somewhere in that range. But an 8.5 spring, definitely less than a 9. So, of course, he calls the guy up that he bought the stuff from. The guy argues with him. Oh, that ain't going to work, blah, 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 blah. And I says, bro, I'm not going to talk to the guy, because it's going to end ugly, because I'm going to tell him what I think. Right? I don't know what springs Terry put on your Suzuki.
I don't know either. It just said it's set up for a 195 width.
There you go. Sure. It's probably got 90 or 95 springs. Yeah.
And I'm much heavier than that now,
Kerry
but
knows.
I'm never going to admit it.
But Kerry's got enough seat time where he knows. So he finally gets the springs, and Eric, swaps them. Eric Gray from Augustine puts the right springs on. I says, okay, come out to the next track day and let me fine tune it, make sure it's got the right preload. So we set it up. 85 spring on the back. I think we went 85s on the front, and you put 8 millimeters of preload. That's like I was taught to start off with 8 mils of preload. You got about 10 mils of assembled preload. Then you got another 8 millimeters of preload. And hanging out with Stig Peterson, the guy that helped Nikki and I. He worked for the Gaulois, Christian Sauron and Jean-Philippe Rouge on the Gaulois 500cc GP team. He was the guy that helped Nikki and I. And he told me that's what they do. You get the right spring, 10 mils of assembled preload, another 8 mils of additional preload, and that's your starting point. It should, with those numbers, depending on how long the spring is, most of them are 150 millimeters. That should give you somewhere between more than, he said the numbers on the sag in the back, all it says 25 to 35. So you got a 10 millimeter area. Fronts, 30 to 40. And just about everything that's made now in the last 20 years is exactly the same. Nothing's changed.
Yeah,
Nobody's reinvented the wheel. You know what
because
I'm saying?
it's roughly the same geometry.
Oh yeah, I mean slope angles, offsets on triple clamps. They change. The frame flex, electronics. The diameter of the fork tube for a certain amount of flex, triple clamps. Just that's just refining stuff. But the actual how the springs work, how the damping works, that hasn't changed in 25 years.
Yeah, true.
I mean, we've had guys that show up with 20 2000 GSXR 750s, like the Matt Mladen years. Dude, they're hauling ass on those things. They're so fast.
Yeah.
They're not that far off from the new stuff.
But then the machineries and the tolerances and how thin everything became, that changed tremendously.
I think I remember watching your podcast with Kerry, and he's talking about the metallurgy, how things have changed, and it's incredible that they're getting, I mean, I think it is now. They've got so much data, right?
Yeah.
The engineers,
Yeah.
that they already know what size the valve stem needs to be. They already know, how long the valve spring or the valve stem or the trapped angles of, and if you look at all the four-cylinder sport bikes, and I don't know anything about the Ducatis, I'm not that familiar with them. But if you all the BMWs, GSXR 1000s, Yamaha R1s, and the Cowies, if you measure the bores and strokes and the size of the rods and the cam journals and the valve train, they're all pretty close.
Yeah.
Right? Because, when I worked at Yamaha, when they come out with a new model, like they came out with the R1 in 98, we would send employees over to a Suzuki dealer and buy a brand new GSXR 1000. And we'd bring it back to Yamaha, we'd take it apart, down to the cases. And we'd buy a Cowie, we'd buy a Suzuki, we'd buy a Honda. And they do the same thing. So everybody knows what everybody's got.
Yeah.
So nobody's got any secrets because everybody already knows. So they're learning from the other guys' equipment. So, but anyway, getting back to Whitney's R6, then he had a stroke. We finally got it working, right? And he had a stroke, and thank God it didn't kill him, and he's recovered. He's still not 100%, but he's better. So now he's got this motorcycle that Attack. Joseph at Attack did a super stock spec, like 132 horsepower. When he was now that he got all the suspension, and now he sends the whole bike over to Joseph. They do some trick stuff with the CNC, cutting it with the head. I don't know what he does. Sooner slipper clutch, auto blip, oversized radiator. I mean, I think he spent like $25,000 with Attack.
I still don't count on auto blips. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I've had too many false neutrals on those things.
Yeah. I've never, it took a while. So we never had any of that stuff when I was racing. We never had, quick shifters, any of that stuff. And we finally I was making some automatic shifters out of some, out of some stuff from Radio Shack. You'd get a timer. So I had like an automatic shifter that ran off the kill button circuit back in '93. And we finally got, remember the KLSs? You could buy. So they came out with the KLS, and the reason we didn't have one because they're like $600 or something. So Nicky had already been on it for I don't know, a year. A couple of years we're using it, on the TZs. And you don't think it does much. It's like, what could that thing possibly do? So, but you've got enough big laps at Willow on the big track. When you come down the hill into 5 and your foot peg's on the ground, right? So you go second, third, and as you crest the hill, you hit 4th. And you got to roll out of the throttle trying to get down the gearbox to shift it, right?
Yeah.
So I've never ridden anything. I finally went out and finally got a chance to sample it myself. It's like, the tag just bumps. I remember like the first couple laps when I'm hitting the shifter, I go, this is cheating. Because it was like effortless. It
Yeah.
doesn't, the bike doesn't even know it's like an automatic transmission.
Yeah.
So, and they've come so much more refined from after that. And I've never ridden any big street bike, with or a 600 with any of that stuff. I just, I've been helping guys. So that basically, we got Andre on it, and he rode a couple of CRA races, and then like I said, I'm not saying like I was a suspension expert on all these street bike stuff, because I was like starting from scratch again in 2018. I had no experience working there on street bikes. I never messed with them. So then I got the call from James Morse, and Jim Hoskins from Track Experience. They needed some guy. So I just kind of, I'm not a big numbers guy, but I kind of started off and measured them to make sure they were in that range. You know what I'm saying? Like 25 to 35 on the back, or 25 to 35. And I would be a little conservative. I generally set them up 20 and 30 in the back, 35 in the front, because they're track day guys.
Yeah.
They're not
They're not,
racers,
yeah. Yeah.
right? So you want to, I was always taught, Stick Peterson says, Steve, you only got a certain number of millimeters of suspension travel. You need to use all of it. The lower you
True.
can get the thing to the ground, and the lower
True.
you get that bike to the ground, the better it's going to work. You're just going to transition from left to right. You got to get that massive weight down as far as you can. So I've always been a big fan of, using all. You got to use all the suspension, right? If you got, I've seen guys that they're out there on the track, they come back in and they got an inch of, or maybe 3/4 of an inch of travel they're not using. I don't, the bikes, first I was riding high in the stroke, so it's not going to turn. It's not going to hold its line at corner exit. And the guys, they just, I says, you need to run some softer springs or something, because you're not using all the stroke. So a lot of guys, they don't know who I am. They won't listen. They just change the subject. So it's like, you know what? I'm the kind of guy where there's been more than instances more than 100. I guarantee it, in the last 5 years, where I have guys, if the rider's been, and I say, look, I don't know who set your bike up. It doesn't really matter. I don't care. But it takes, a couple of minutes. Just roll your bike over to my pits, and I'll grab the brakes. And I can tell you by shoving on it, people say you can't do it that way. I'll argue with you until I'm blue in the face, because I can. If you can't, and I'm not saying I'm above anybody else, but I've been doing this for so long, I know what a good setup feels like when you push on it.
Yeah. If you've been doing it for over 50 years.
Yeah, I've been doing
So
it for so long,
yeah.
and I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but I can tell you that you're not going to crash. Generally I'll have guys come by. I said, dude, I don't charge anything. If it doesn't need anything, and there's been, a few instances, I've been helping Dustin, with track days at a couple of events. And I don't know if you've seen the new Suzuki, looks like the factory bike, like a super bike. It's the GSXR 1000. So it looks like one of Ulrich's race bikes.
Okay.
So it's like a production, 1000. And it's
The,
got the gas pressurized showers, with the
yeah.
chamber.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. The
It's got,
BFF.
what's
BFF. It's
that?
called. It's called BFF, I think.
Yeah, the BFF forks. Yeah. So I had a guy come by with one that only had like 600 miles on it, and the first thing he did is he put some better tires on it. Although the stock Bridgestones, I think, were actually pretty good. So he brings it over to me, and I remember grabbing the forks, and it felt like a Grand Prix bike. I've never stock forks right off the factory. I go on the handlebars. I pushed on the front, a little bit of machine sag, lifted the drop a little bit, grabbing the brakes. I says, I'd be an idiot if I touched this.
I don't know.
I
Mine's
go, who's worked on it? He goes, nobody. I go, that's why.
Mine's the BFF, but the inside are Orleans.
Right, sure, yeah. But
But
you could have probably gotten away with running the stock suspension.
I just wanted something flashy.
Oh, I know.
That's all.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I understand that.
I just yeah I just I drove to a Suzuki dealership. I put a brand new GSX-R in the back of my truck. I drove to Van Nuys. I gave it to Carrie.
Yeah, you didn't even wrote it. You didn't even write it. Yeah,
I didn't even write it,
Uh,
there you go. Yeah, I can
and
understand
I
that.
went like deer thing, and a year and a half later, that's what I got.
Yeah, and then
well,
I remember.
Gal's motto is if you can dazzle them with lap times, baffle them with fancy stuff on the bike.
Yeah, what is that? Dazzle them with brilliance and baffle them with bullshit.
Yeah, fancy part.
So yeah,
Here's
so like I said, I'm curious. Like I said, I'm not trying to say that I know more than any of these other guys do.
Well, we're gonna see right now because we have a bunch of suspension
Okay,
questions
okay,
for
I'm
you.
ready. I'm ready.
All right, ready? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
First
let's start
questions.
with a palate cleanser here. What would be helpful for our listeners is, you get a good feel for suspension. You can set it up just by looking at it in the pit. But often when I ride, sometimes I come back and if somebody's helping me with suspension, they go like, "So, how did it feel?" I don't know what to tell them.
Right.
All right. So, what do you listen to? What should
Okay.
people
So,
know or look for to tell me?
a lot of it is okay. When you have first off, if you're fighting the bike, right? And, my whole plan when I tackle a job or a customer where the bike's my whole idea is to make that bike an afterthought where you're not even thinking about it. You just go into the corner. You're not even it goes exactly where you want it to go. It holds its line. It's stable under brakes. It holds its line under acceleration. So basically, when somebody comes over to me, first off, you can look at the tires. The tires will tell you a lot what's going on. And then, I'll have them hold the handlebars. I'll shove. I always start in the back because the back can make the front do weird stuff. The back's off; it'll make the thing run wide. So, anyways, I shove on the back, and I don't really say much. And then I'll say, "Okay, what are you complaining about?" So after shoving on it, I kind of already know the answer, right? But I got to hear it out of him. So we were at Buttonwillow a couple of years ago, and there was a guy that had a probably probably he's one of the RSV4 Aprilias, but they have the one that
Mhm.
has the all-in suspension from the factory.
Well, that Owens, I could tell you, I had an RSV4. That Owens is not. It's not Owens. It's not real
But look,
Owens.
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's
Yeah,
OEM. Yeah.
yeah, own it. Oh yeah, but it was scary to ride, right? To where it's like I got no feel in the front. And I remember the first thing I did is I grabbed the front and it felt good. It was, I don't think anybody done anything to the bike. It's pretty stock. He was about 225 pounds, but it did have a TTX shock on the back. So he comes in over to the pits and I go, stand up and sit down on the seat. I wanted to see how far it moved. Just kind of, because you can tell an inch, right? You can see an inch or more. So he was probably 6 foot, not a fat guy, just a big dude. And he goes to sit down, it didn't move an inch, a half inch. I mean, it was stiff. It was destroying the rear tire. So I've seen this a number of times because the back setting can make the front do weird stuff. So I said, okay, hang on a second. So it had the hydraulic preload adjuster. So I just started, one rotation is 1 millimeter on spring preload. So I made a little mark, started backing it off, and I went like, I don't know, 4 turns, 5 turns, so 5 millimeters, quite a bit, 150 millimeter spring. It still had no machine sag. It was still a brick. So I'm looking down the spring at 95. That should be pretty close. So the way that thing is set up, you can't measure I usually like to get a measuring tape and measure the free length of the spring. And I couldn't get a measuring tape in there. So I just keep on cranking. I did like 3 or 4 more turns.
Mm.
And finally, I was able to get the thing to move, where you push on it, it's actually moving. So there's no way this thing came this way from the factory. There's absolutely no way. Right? So I didn't measure it. I just, okay, I think and he had, because it had so much preload, the rebound adjusters were like 5 out from all the way in because it's got so much spring force, because it got so much preload on the shock. So, okay, let me just kind of take an educated guess. So I went like in the middle of the range, I don't know, 20 out on both or whatever the heck it was. And I says, well, it's got like maybe a quarter of an inch of sag, machine sag. You go too much, you get in trouble. But at least it moved, and he sits on it now. It's probably moving inch and a quarter, 30 mils. So he takes off, and I literally didn't touch the front. I didn't turn a clicker. I didn't, it was felt good. So another guy. So there's another guy in line. So I'm working on his bike. They were at Budwillow, and he 20 minutes later he comes back, and I says, "Bring it back. I want to look at the rear tire to see if it cleans up." So he comes back. I don't know, 20-minute sessions, I guess. And he comes back. I see him like a half hour later, and he just pulls back into my pits. And he's looking at he's got a phone, and he's doing his lap times, and he just kind of didn't say nothing. He didn't take his helmet off. He's just kind of looking at me, and it's like, I don't know if he's almost because he's mad at me or something. I didn't know. So he does, I just went 7 seconds faster. And he goes, this thing turns. I've never had something turn that good. He goes, I got so much feel out of the front tire. It's turning easier. It's transitioning easier. I got feel. It's not running wide anywhere. And I just took I kind of guessed. And, but like I said, you get that feel. It's probably pushing on something. So he didn't understand. He goes, Steve, you didn't touch the forks. I go, it's not the front. So what's happening is the swing arm's not moving. When he opens the throttle, it's not squatting, right? Because it's so stiff. So it's trying to wheelie everywhere. It's pulling the wheel off the ground. You're driving around on the rear wheels the whole time. That's what's going on. So people will probably argue with me. You want to get the bike to turn better. You want to get weight on the front. You make the back softer.
That's true. I found out.
But it doesn't. But you think it wouldn't turn better? You're jacking the front of the bike out. You're adding more trail, more rake. It's going to turn better.
Yeah.
It's going to. Okay, and I found out when you run these, a lot of guys like to run them really, really high. They call this ride height. That will affect from vertical, when you first grab the brakes, to about the first 10 degrees of lean, because it's so steep. So your initial pull on the handlebars to get it to turn in is going to be better. But if everything past that, it's going to stink. It's not going to finish the corner. It's not going to hold its line because you don't have enough weight on the front of the bike. So anytime I've gotten into trouble with a bike where I couldn't, I had a ZX6. And we were at Bunwillow, at Chuckwalla for a track experience weekend. And Sean was there. And that was the weekend he got cleaned out by some guy out on the Aprilia. He was on his R3. Anyway, he had a guy with his 636. And he was having all kinds of chatter problems in the front. And was stock except for all his cartridges and a TTX shock. And he's had it to every suspension guy. Nobody can get rid of the chatter. So I played with and I couldn't get rid of the chatter until I go, what's the standard fork protrusion? From the top of the triple clamp, how far is the fork sticking up? Mm-hmm. And he goes, level. Supposed to be just the cap showing. It was up 10 millimeters. So, and I'm going to be honest with you, how that got rid of the chatter, I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, I've had chatter. Like most of the time, you get chatter mid corner. When somebody says he's got chatter, is it on the brakes? Is it off the gas? On the gas, mid corner, off throttle, on throttle, neutral throttle? because there's all kinds of chatter can be caused by different things. So you got to find out where it's chattering first. And this was as long as he had it loaded, either he's on the gas or on the brakes, there was no chatter. As soon as that transition, you get into the corner, you get off the brakes, and right before you start rolling on that little gray area before, I mean, it was you could hear it. You could hear the tire chirping. And I mean, I played around with oil level, and I didn't play with oil level, but about pretty. It felt good when you pushed on it. The back felt good. I go, is the shock any longer? He goes, no. So I finally said, well, I'm running out of things to try. He'd come back to me, 3 or 4 times, and I've tried a lot, from way stiff to way soft, lots of preload, unwind it, make it free, make it stiff. And I says, go back to, you got to stand, to go under the triple clamp. And I says, yeah, I said, go get it. And because I didn't have one. And let's put those fork tabs, those forks back where they're supposed to be, stock. So 10 millimeters, I didn't realize is quite a bit on that, as far as trail numbers go. So we pushed him down, made him even, went back out, gone. He's been battling this for like a year. And he came back after we lowered the forks and put him back to stock.
That is interesting.
Amazing, yeah.
So all he needed was a little less weight on the front, basically.
Yeah. So when you push the forks down, you actually raise the front of the bike up, so it'll steer better.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
A little less weight on the front, basically.
Exactly.
Not on
so
gas.
when you raise them up like that, it takes weight off the front. Yeah. So like I said, I'm not like, I didn't go to engineering school to figure all this stuff out. But every time I got in trouble, and sometimes you go the wrong way because especially if it's an aftermarket suspension, you don't know if somebody's done any revolving. Sometimes it's you're going into something blind, and 90% of the time, probably maybe more than that, I just go back to stock. Put it back. Where was it set up from the factory? How much? Other guys will change oil level. They'll do this. They do all this, and it's like, sometimes you need to just leave it alone and ride the darn thing. Especially now. The new. If you looked at the suspension on the new R1M, they got this amazing stuff from Kayaba. The shock is like it's got high and low speed compression and rebound. Shocks have high, compression and rebound on one side, and it got high speed compression on the other side. I mean, you look at these forks. If I was going to buy a bike like that, I don't know if I'd leave that stuff on there if I was racing, but a fast track guy, that's adequate. No question. And everybody, like you did, you went out and you wanted to buy the Olins. Yeah, okay. That makes sense because at least you're giving the Olin stuff to a guy that knows how to set it up. Right? And you drop that bike off with confidence, knowing when you got it back, your biggest concern is what you're going to have for lunch, right?
Yeah. Also, I like to go out to the garage and just look at my bikes.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of that, guys, because I haven't ridden in 8 months because of my eye thing. But yeah.
Let's push through those questions that we have, the suspension questions. Okay, first one. Talk about sprung weight versus unsprung weight.
As far as suspension goes, yeah. The first thing that you noticed when you put different wheels on a bike, you gotta get acceleration. That's kind of where that's where that comes in. Anytime you can get weight off the end of the swing arm, the bike's gonna react quicker.
Yeah.
So, but then of course you've got to remember that they got to make these things sturdy enough to handle the street, right? Every time I see you got carbon wheels or no
mags.
Okay, yeah.
So I don't have street wheels for sure. No.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never been a big fan of magnesium stuff for the street because if you hit something like a manhole cover, it's gonna break instead of bend.
Yeah. So sprung versus unsprung is sprung weight is anything that's above the suspension.
Exactly.
Unsprung,
Yeah,
anything that's below the suspension.
exactly.
Your
Yep.
wheels, your disc brakes, your
Yep. Yep.
calipers.
Yep.
Yeah, all
Yeah.
that.
But like
Okay.
we had a chance, when I was tuning for Nick, we got a Marchesini sponsorship. So, the stock wheels on the TZs, they're really, really thin. They're really good. They're aluminum cast, they're cast aluminum, but they're actually pretty thin. They're really, really light. But Marchesini calls up and he says, "Hey, will you put a sticker on the bike if we give you two sets of wheels everywhere?" And I went, "Sure." So, so that was another thing. But then the thing about it is they you got to give them back at the end of the year because they started to deteriorate, which I had no idea. When you get them out, we used to get them out of the brand new. They gave us back then the stock TZ front was a 375, and the rear was a 5 1/4. So they gave us a 375 and a 350, a little bit narrower, to pull the sidewalls in, and then the stock rear was a 5 1/4. And they gave us a 5 1/4 and a 5 1/2. So, and we tried, different, and you're talking an eighth of an inch on one side, it changes so we tried both wheels. We'd go out and put the same tire on one wheel, then swap the rotors, and Nicky go out again because he couldn't feel any difference. I rode it, I couldn't feel any difference. So,
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know, why they would even do that. I guess it's change the profile of the tire. I'm thinking.
Could be. All right, next question. Talk a little bit about the basic setting of suspension, sag, compression damping, low and high speed compression,
Yeah.
rebound, and
Mhm.
sag. Just short
Well,
answers. What did they do?
I used to, the numbers that I used to run on Nick's TZ are basically the same stuff you're running now. I always look for something, depending how fast you are. But I start everybody off with 30, 28 to 30 in the back. That's static sitting on the bike. And then and then the machine sag, I like to keep around 5 to 6 mils, quarter of an inch. For street guys, for racers, it's different. But 95% of the stuff I do is track day guys. I haven't gone to the track with anybody. And when you're in the last fronts, 35. And it's hard to measure, free sag, on a set of forks, as you well know. So I basically top it off, get the wheel off the ground, measure from the bottom of the clamp to the bottom of the axle, bottom of the fork tube. And I try to start off everybody at 35. Or
Okay.
even if it's something 20 years old, it's nothing's really changed much. And then,
Sure.
you can look up the clicker numbers from the factory where they come set up, right? And if it's generally nowadays, they'll start you off in the middle of the range. Like if it's got 30 clicks, it'll be 15. And if the guys, it depends if the guy. Sometimes the guys will come in and just tell you what the bike is doing, right? So the first thing you do that I do is see where it's sagged, right? If it's got 20 in the less than 20 in the back, that's usually means it's too stiff. And
Okay.
everybody's going to say, well, that's there's so many variables now, right? So what I found is you can tell by how you talk to the guy whether he's got experience or not. After 5 minutes of conversation, if he knows, you know, if he knows, if he knows what to feel, So what's it doing? So a lot of times I'll say is okay. So you get done with your brakes, you turn it in. As soon as you start to open the throttle, if you loosen the grip on the bars, right,
Yeah.
doesn't want to pick itself up and run wide. And generally, when they do that, it's too stiff in the back.
Yeah.
because it's not the thing's not squatting enough. That's why it's not turning, right? So like I said, you got to ask the right questions to get the right answers. You know what I'm saying,
Yep.
right?
Okay, next
Yeah.
question. Everybody heard the term cold tear, but what does
Yeah.
it really mean and how do you get over it?
Well, it all depends. Um, a lot of guys, Alfonso was having some problems with, with his Aprilia. He's running like I forget what tire he was running, but he's running a pretty soft tire. So I said, well, here's what you can do. You can first off, you may not have enough force on the tire to generate heat, right? So usually when they're tearing because you're not building any heat in the tire. That's why the rubber's tearing off. It's not planted. So generally, a lot of times, you stiffen it up, put some more spring in it, and go to a harder tire. And everybody it sounds kind of goofy. It kind of sounds backwards, but
Hmm.
you're not going to get any heat in the front. If the tire's hot, it's going to not get. In other words, you can't build heat in soft rubber. It just comes off, right? So I think that's what I'm not sure about what he did for the afternoon, but he ran a softer tire and got hurt. He went from an SC1 to an SCO, and it got worse. So I think he was going to try an SC2. And it's kind of when you got cold conditions, you want to run a harder tire. It kind of sounds not right, but that's generally what you do. I've seen that more than once. Run a harder tire. Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, yeah.
Okay, and
Okay.
the last question is how often should you service your suspension?
You know, the oil nowadays depends on how old the bike is. What kind of oil that you ran in it. The stuff now. Um, when I was helping Jake Feature like 3 years ago, and he's got a stock R1, I put the thing together, and we run the oil in the shock, the zero weight, and then I ran, the 5 weight Olin's oil, and it's expensive. It's it's $30 for a liter, $28 for 1 liter. So I rebuilt his forks at the beginning of the first season. He ran it the whole season. I don't know how many CVM rounds they have, like 5 or 6. And then we'd go out to
6.
Big Willow and do practice days. And at the end of the season, he won 2 championships, which is pretty cool. And then I says at the end of the year, bring the forks back, bring me the shock back, and we'll service it. Just take it apart. I remember taking the forks apart. There was absolutely no wear on the bushings. The oil was still perfectly clear. And this was a whole year, literally a whole year of CVM racing at Chuckwalla, a whole season. And I started off with new stuff. I remember I'm draining the oil out. It looks like I just poured it in yesterday. So I think a lot of that comes from what kind of oil you use. There's good stuff, and then there's real good stuff. And as soon as I saw it, I was, you can buy Yamaha fork oil, you can buy Honda fork oil. It's made by Showa. But as soon as I started using this stuff, I want to use nothing else. I don't know who makes it. I mean, they don't have their own refinery. They're not making their own fork oil, but they got engineers that are building it to their spec, I think, right? So it depends. For street riding, I don't. I've got 25,000 miles on my FC09, and we put the brand new shock in the all its cartridge kit on it when it was brand new, and it still feels as good as the first time I rode it. Nothing's changed. So I think maybe a good way to know when it needs to be changed would probably be when the shock starts to feel free, like loose. You know what I'm saying? It was working good, it's working good, it's working good. Now it feels like everything's gotten quicker.
Yeah, the
And I
oil
think
is
that's
shredded.
probably
The
Moving
that's
too much.
molecules
probably
are,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah, that's probably an indication the oil's done.
yeah.
You're running out of whatever,
Yeah, it's
but you know,
shredded. There's no viscosity
right,
anymore.
there's no viscosity left, no oil. But do you go that far before you finally change it? Because then what's happening? You're probably wearing parts out inside the shock.
Yeah, the seals.
The
Right.
seals, the inside of the shock body's getting
Yeah,
wear.
yeah,
So that's a fine line. I'm sure there's a way to. I'm sure Yamaha and all the manufacturers have checked that, right? They probably know.
yeah.
All I know is we ran the same. I was going to take the Jake's. When he brought it to me after the first season, he won these two championships, amateurs. I think he was into the 40. I don't know how fast he was going. I think he was doing 40 high sevens, low eights, pretty good. It was a stock 2018. Anyway, I remember him bringing me the forks, and I drained the oil out. I was going to take them all apart and clean them out. And I said, "Screw this! I just poured more oil back." I just drained them overnight, poured oil back in them, and gave it back to him. I said, "These things, SKF seals, and I mean, the oil that came out looked brand new. I don't think I charged him, but I didn't take them apart. I just set the oil level back to where it was, put the caps back on, and said, "Here." And he was right the shit out of that thing. So I think, like I said, I think a lot of it depends on what how old the shock is. Number one, because the older stuff, like I said, all the new stuff now, like the new Ducatis, any of the new four-stroke BMWs, they're running high end stuff in those forks.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm.
so I would probably say if you're a serious street rider where you're riding canyons and you're on a sport bike and you're riding it hard and you're rolling up every weekend, I would say 25,000 miles, get shock done and the forks done. Yeah.
Okay.
So I got 26,000 or 7,000 on my FZ09. I probably won't touch it until they start leaking. That's just me. I hate to be honest with you guys. That's why I send stuff to JJ now. I've been doing this for so long. I'm good at setting stuff up. I'm probably as good as anybody. I'm not going to say I'm better. But after 50 years of getting your hands dirty,
Yeah.
I'm kind of over it. And I'm not saying that because I don't want to, I'm lazy, but you can understand, when you start taking fork seals apart and how hard you try, you end up soaking one of your tennis shoes with fork oil. I don't give a shit. I can remember this goes back. I don't know. I was doing a set of forks, and every time you do it, okay, I'm gonna make sure I got the drain pan right here, and I got the little things to hold the fork. And because it's such a pain in the ass to deal with the stuff, especially when it's old, nasty, really shitty fork oil or shock oil. It stinks. It's black. It's so and everything you touch turns black and smelly. And your hands, you can't get the smell out of your cuticles for a month. So, I can remember, doing a set of forks for somebody. I don't know who it was. Pouring bleeding the cartridge, and got the fork in my little thing, and bleeding the cartridge, and I set the oil level, suck the oil out, and put the spring in, put the cap on, screwing the cap on, and take the fork out, and I set it down. One's down, so the other ones are also. I'm gonna just fill it and bleed it. And I don't know why you remember stupid stuff like this. So I get in with the second one, and I'm standing there. So I set the other fork down, and I reached down to move, and I stepped. It was like a metal, like a pan about size of a pizza, maybe an inch and a half high. It was just a steel tin that I drained stuff into. So as I go to stand up, I stepped on the edge of the drain screw and flipped it up
Oh,
and filled. There was oil coming out of my shoelace holes. So I just looked down there, literally covered, soaked my socks. Anyway, I know
That
it's
must have been fun to clean.
yeah, yeah. So that's probably why I don't like to change fork oil that much. But I would, I don't know if you guys agree with it. I think 25,000 would probably be, if you're a fast rider, you're going up Angeles Crest and you're going through the canyons.
Yeah, I would do. Yeah, I would
Uh,
do.
That sounds about right, I think.
I
Yeah,
I I,
yeah.
I would do. I would do the
It'd be
fork.
interesting to I'd be interested to hear what JJ and Bobby say about that. I wonder if they're in that same line.
I would do the fork before I would do the rear
Yeah,
shock
the shock might be
usually.
able to go more. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
and as far as track riding, if you're a track day rider, I would say 5,000
Yeah,
miles.
it'd be interesting to hear those, Joseph and attack he does on the shocks over there too. He's very good at rebuilding all GTX stuff. I'm not sure what oil he runs, but they're probably running the old one's oil, right?
Yeah.
And he's been around and been doing it a hell of a lot longer than I have on these, heavier street bikes, R1s, R6s. So it'd be interesting to hear. I'd like to ask him one day. Get his, what would he? Sure, I mean, there's a lot about how fast you're going, how much you weigh.
Yeah, you kind of start you kind of start feeling the deterioration. I mean,
Oh yeah,
after
everything. It's
yeah,
everything speeds up.
yeah,
When the oil starts wearing out, it just all the dampening gets free.
yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway,
But there's also a question of age. I mean, if you don't do 25,000 miles in 10 years, do you keep them or do you service them? Because the seals are getting old, they're cracking, oil
sure.
got
Yeah,
Yeah, it's true. True.
has an
yeah,
expiry date.
I would put a 3 year span on it.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
Like,
sounds about right.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I think.
Interesting. Yeah, and
Tell
then
us.
of course, now they got the SKF seals came out. They've been around actually longer than I actually thought. So I don't know if Kerry used those. Probably, I bet you he did. Kerry knows about that stuff.
Uh,
It just reduces a little bit of friction. It just
tell
make it,
us.
yeah.
Tell us about your medical condition.
Um, I was wearing glasses when I was 6. I was 6 weeks uh, premature. So I don't know if that had anything to do with my vision developing because my sister's perfect vision, my brother's perfect. My brothers, they're both getting a little bit older now. My sister's 2 years older than me. My brother's 4 years younger than me. But my grandmother had cataracts, and and it was actually okay. I got LASIK, which kind of helps to correct the vision, and then there was some other laser thing that I got done probably 10 years ago, and now it's getting to the point where when I first started wearing contacts, if they were hard contacts, and you take them out, but you had to clean them all the time, take them out, and squirt the solution, and now you just leave them in for a week and throw them away. But after 3 or 4 days, it would get cloudy, like because they get films on the inside, so. You take them out, you soak them in this solution. I mean, I did this for 20 something years. And then you put them back in, it's like, and it's still pretty pretty foggy. So you go get a new lens, because they've been in for a couple of days. So you just put another lens in, it's still the same. And it's like this is getting every year, and it's so progressive, right? It's kind of like when you turn pro and you're finally getting running top 10 with the big guys, and all of a sudden you're running top 5, and you don't know how you got there.
Yeah.
You look back and try to point a finger on how you all of a sudden now you're. And Sean's the same way. This last season, he beat guys. The first couple of years he was doing this, there were the guys that Dylan Schwartz and Peter and all these guys. He couldn't hang with them if he tried, and it was funny because later towards the end of the season, we're driving back from wherever, New Jersey or someplace, and I can see it. He's flying. I mean, he's still 5 seconds off what the AMA guys did at the same track, 25 years ago, but he'd be top 15 in an AMA national the way he was riding right now. But he doesn't realize it because, the progression is slow. And I mean, coming back from a couple of races, he goes, man, I don't know what's going on with Peter and Dylan and these guys, man. I mean, it's like they're not going near as fast as they used to go. And I said, dude, it ain't. It's you. And I told you when we started, all of a sudden you're going to be top 5 or top 10. Then you're going to be top 5, and then you're going to win. And he won a bunch of races last year. And it's like, how did I get here? You don't know. You just got to keep plugging along, pay attention, set the bike up. And we set the bike up at Indy Lab this year, beginning of the season, and then ran it the entire season. I don't know how many more tracks without touching it. The only time I touched it, it was so good. Nicky wrote it. And he said, So, anyways, to get back to the eyeballs, yeah. So this is getting to the point where I at night I'm riding, I can't see clearly. I can't see this. So I go back to the eye doctor. They give me a stronger lens, and this is
Mhm.
going on like since 2015, 2016, to where now it's gotten to the point where I can't read a menu. This is like 5 years ago. I can't read. It's getting darker because the lenses are getting so cloudy. They're not letting light into my retinas. So I've actually, talked to a couple of doctors. So where we are now um, is I've been to a couple of eye doctors. A guy down in Torrance named Sabadian, Babak Sabadian, a German guy, and another guy named Height, who's up in Redondo Beach. This is so it's lens replacement, where they got to come in and slice the eyeball and they take your lens out. But the issue that I have is I have astigmatism. I don't know if you're familiar with what that is. So your eyeball is not round; it's like egg shaped.
Yeah.
So to make a lens, you could get a standard ocular lens, correct? That like so it's to get a prescription for a contact lens or eyeglasses. So there's numbers, but it's not going to focus. It's not going to. You're going to be focused. One part of your eye is going to be focused. Another, the outer ring of your eye is going to be out of focus. So it's going to create, weird stuff. So in order to do that, they have to make a special lens for um,
For the shape of your
for
eye.
the
That's
shape of your
custom.
eyeball because my eyeball's not round and one side's worse than the other. So I've been to two doctors. I've been to two doctors before I've been to. I've got this new guy I'm going to see on Tuesday. He's and things have caught. He says, Steve, there might be a way we can get around it because the lenses are $600 a piece.
Mhm.
So you got to basically they go through all the stuff. They get the dimensions of the eyeball. They send that stuff to Bausch and Lomb up in their headquarters in Toronto, Canada. They make the lens, then they ship the lens down, and then we have the surgery to put it in.
Yeah.
So at this point, and so I tried to do this 3.5 years ago with Sabatian and Torrance. So it's like you look through a half a dozen. It's not like getting a regular eye exam where you just look through, they switch the lenses better, clearer, sharper or worse. This is like they map the inside of you, the shape of your eye, the shape of your retina, the shape of your cornea. I mean, the exam was 2 hours. I mean, I go from one room to another room, and I don't know half the stuff that they're doing. Millions of dollars worth of testing equipment. So we get all done, ready to go. And they're gonna. I had the health net. I'm paying $900 a month, because I'm self-employed. You got to have private insurance because Medicare they don't send you anybody that's that knows what they're doing. You're dealing with my eyes. I can't see now anyway, right? So we're almost ready to go. I'm gonna have to pay 20%, and it's like $18,500. It's not cheap. So the day that I was, you have to pay for everything ahead of time before they do the surgery. They're going to pay for the lenses to be made, and I paid the $200 out of my pocket for the exam, so it's another 17,000, whatever the heck it was. So I'm getting ready to come in. They got the lens. They hadn't made the lenses yet, right? Because you got to pay for them first. So I get a text. My doctor gets an email from HealthNet saying that these lenses fall into the category of being elective cosmetic surgery.
Wow.
Yeah,
So first of all,
and
I have to say this is bullshit. Everything to do. I mean, both me and Nabil, we weren't born in this country,
yeah,
but coming over here, I can tell you that the entire medical system here
It's a
is a
joke.
racket. It's just a
Correct.
racket.
It's not. It's business. They don't give a shit whether you live or die.
Yeah.
Sadly.
And then we were ready to go, and I've given these guys $900 a month for 15 years, and
Mm.
they can't get off of $17,500.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and like I said, you got to bite your tongue, and you feel bad for this one health insurance guy that got shot, killed, but it's
Yeah.
and then you see, oh yeah, the CEO of HealthNet made $26 million last year, and all
Yeah.
and they could have done it easily.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you find
Yeah.
out that some of the agents that work, they get bonuses for the most claims they turn down.
I think a part of the problem, or most of the problem, I think, is the fact that we have health insurance. There shouldn't be anything like that. I mean,
It shouldn't be
it's
insurance. Yeah,
no, shouldn't be
Yeah.
insurance.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
That
Everybody
Because
should
that
have,
layer
yeah,
is a disaster
yeah,
yeah, everybody should have coverage.
system.
right.
And I'm not here trying to figure out a solution because
Yeah,
that I mean, it's a much broader problem of the fact that politicians need money to run,
yeah.
right? And
Like
Yeah.
I said, I'm glad you guys. I know we talked about this earlier when we were talking about this whole deal that we're going to do, and it's almost criminal, is what it is.
it is criminal.
It's,
It's just that they're in charge of the law,
yeah,
right? So
right.
they can
So
make,
they control whether your
yeah,
livelihood.
yeah,
This is
Yeah.
basically, we're talking, once you get the lenses made, it's 15 minutes of surgery. They make one incision, they pull the old lens out, they slide a new lens in, a couple of drops of surgical glue, done.
yeah.
Right.
Now they're making them now where they're synthetic. Like some of the old days when they first started doing this, your eyeball might reject it. So they've got whatever they're making the lenses out of now, it's synthetic stuff. Your eyeball doesn't reject it. Try to reject it so you don't get infections.
Yeah.
And this could be, and I was so gung ho because I'm going to get to see again because my vision was good, with the right lenses. But now I was at point like 950 lens on the right side, 0.95 on if you're not familiar with contact lenses. I was 750 on the left, 950 on the right.
Wow.
I mean, that's like I can't see. I mean, I'm blind.
So
Yeah.
what you did is someone else started. It's
So
not a
yeah,
go.
Sean actually started it.
Yeah, it's not a GoFundMe. What is it?
It's
It's
not a GoFundMe. It's called Angel Link.
Angel Link.
And the company's run by a bunch of gals. They're in Florida.
Okay.
And they don't work on percentages like GoFundMe gets. They get like 20%. I mean, that's a multi-billion-dollar company now. They're making money hand over fist.
Yeah.
These
Right.
guys specialize in, when you get a hospital bill and what your copay is like a huge amount of money where the family's going to lose their house because they don't care. If you don't pay the copay, they'll just take your house away.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I hate to be this rude, but it's criminal what these guys are getting away with. So they raise money. There was this 18-year-old gal. If you get on their website, angellink.com, it's amazing. The girls, you actually talk to people. If you ever try to do anything on GoFundMe, it's a nightmare. So
Mhm.
I mean, the girl's Kathy. She calls me, sends me text messages. We talk all the time. I sent her. I
Nice.
told her about this. Hopefully, she's watching. If not, I'm going to send her the link so she can watch it because I told her I'd
Yeah,
plug her.
and we'll put a link on the
Yeah.
thing as well for
So
people
you
to
can,
check.
and then the Champ School guys put something up. I don't know if you guys saw that. Look on Champ School, and they put a really nice thing in there about me.
Yeah, I saw it, and also in
And then they
Road
sent
Racing
that
World.
link. Yeah,
Yeah.
Champ School.
Yeah.
A couple of nice pictures and talked about all the stuff that. And then they sent that over to John, Road Racing World, and he posted it on his deal. So,
Yeah.
like I said, the easiest way to get on it, I think I think we're like I haven't looked at the number lately, but I think we're past halfway what we need.
Okay,
Right?
so you're gonna get there
Nice.
pretty
Yeah,
quickly.
I think we're going to be okay. So, like I said, and the other thing is this Dr. Height, I'm going to get him out there so everybody knows who he is. Really nice, super nice guy. Been doing it for a long time. Um, he says there's a way, and we already spoke about it, where you might be able. There's ways of working, or these guys all work on a big website. They all work together. There's a big circle. when these guys communicate. If they come up with something that works, they tell their buddies. Okay, we tried this, it works. It was like saving the, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So basically, to get these lenses made, it's still going to be $1,200 for the lenses. You can't get around it. $600 a lens. Bausch and Lomb's not going to give you a discount. Sorry. But now that I'm going to see him on Tuesday, he says we've been doing stuff where lenses are a certain diameter, right? And he says a couple of guys that have astigmatism, they're using a 1 millimeter bigger diameter lens. And I don't know the science behind it, but he says we gotta see how much astigmatism you have. You might be able to get away without it. And so if I can be 95%,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. If I still got to wear reading glasses,
but you should be 100%.
well, like I said, but like I said, I'm just if I can come with, like I said, it's not like I got a little bit of money saved up, and I shouldn't have to. It's the principle, guys, right?
You've been paying insurance all
I've
your
been
life.
paying insurance for 50 years.
You've been paying taxes all your life.
Yeah, my whole life, and it's nothing.
This is the only country that I know that has enough money, for
free healthcare for everybody.
Yeah, free healthcare for everybody, and they just don't do it.
Yeah,
different priorities.
That's I remember George Carlin. There's a big club, and we're not in it.
Yeah.
So I just checked the Angel link, and there's a search bar. So even if you just entered like Biganski or your name, the campaign pops up.
Yes. Yeah, it'll probably, if you put, I think they titled it "Help Steve Regain His Vision."
Yes.
So we're gonna post. Yeah, we're gonna post it in the show links. We're gonna put it on the blog.
When we spoke a month ago, it was, and I got interviewed a lot, and I'm not I like to yak, but I try to keep things, real. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, there are some people out there that don't like me because over the years, if I got a problem with you, most of the time you're going to hear about it right away. And I can, my girlfriend could tell you, I'm going to die of something one day, but it's not going to be stress. Right? Because if I don't carry stuff around with me, I know as soon as I met you guys for the first time, I knew you're real. There's not going to be like a show for just for publicity for all three of us. It's had nothing to do with it. It was we're doing this for a purpose.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe get me a little more recognition for the stuff that I do. It's not rocket science. We're not going to the moon. It's simple. It really is a lot more. It's much simpler than
trying. Yeah, we're just trying to get you healthy again.
And so I think I'm like I said, I got a doctor. I'm gonna be there at Heights Place at 10 a.m. Tuesday.
Okay.
So I think what we'll do is I'm gonna keep stuff on. Keep things going on my Instagram on track suspension, Steve Biganski thing. And like I said, let everybody what's going on, and it doesn't have to be much, guys. I mean, you want $20, $20 here, and the way I looked at it, if I can get $100 out of 200 people, there you go.
You go to McDonald's, you don't get out with $20 anymore. It's $30-$40, right? So.
It's funny. They have these really neat little hamburgers at the gas station, right? And it's like a cheeseburger bacon. They're processed. They're these paper bags, but it's real beef. It's not, processed stuff. And I bought one the other day, and I put it in the microwave. Put a little ketchup and a little mayo on it. It was better than anything I ever had at McDonald's. And then it's $5. Go buy a Big Mac. Go see how much a Big Mac is now.
Yeah.
Like a Big Mac meal is what, $13 now or something ridiculous?
Yeah. Things are
so like I say, guys, this is great. I mean, it's I hope I haven't bored too many people, but
no, it was lovely listening to your stories.
It's sad that it's gone to this.
Don't worry.
If somebody that people that never experienced having eyesight where you can't see, it's terrifying. Like,
So,
Sean and I were flying back from one of the races last year, and I couldn't even read those gate numbers. If he got too far away from me, I got nervous because I may lose him. I can't
don't
recognize him.
stress out. You're halfway there.
Yeah, I
You'll
You'll
get
know.
there
get
pretty
there.
soon.
Yeah, I know.
You'll get there pretty
Thanks
soon.
to you guys for making everybody aware of it. So
Yeah. Now let's finish on a positive note. You've been sending me texts about Mr. John Wick.
yeah,
How
we're
did
not.
how did that connection got made?
I've been in contact with him on and off. He's been sending me DMs. Um, we'll see. I don't want to say anything because he's got his PR people and
Oh, did I spill the beans too soon?
no. We're good. We're good.
Okay.
I approached the guys a long time ago, and because they to see if they wanted any help with their Moto America deal, and they kind of said yeah maybe. So they're not hiring anybody right at the moment, but I can't see anything either. So
Hopefully, all these things will come together at
I
the same
wouldn't be any
time.
use to anybody. And I talked to Robbie, you know, Peterson. He's tuning for Cam this year, his son, and they're on the Josh Aaron's old Ducatis. Me and Robbie go way back, and I talked to Robbie actually this morning when we got to the track, because I thought he was going to still. They were tested here early this week, and I said, "So what's going on with how's Cam doing?" And I guess he did. They were there here Wednesday, and he was sick. And he was riding. He wasn't riding Heron's bike. He was riding some stock street bike, Ducati, and he went 45 flat here. I don't know if anybody knows about lap times. The lap record is like a 42 something on a full blown super bike, high 42.
Yeah.
So he was lapping in 45, minute 45s. But Robbie, I talked to Robbie this morning, and he said Cam has got the flu. He said he's so sick, he's 3 laps and he's done. So they stopped early. They were supposed to they were supposed to, spend, all the way till Friday, I think. So they got to the beginning of the week and they were going to spend, 4 or 5 days. And then, of course, as sick as he was, the kid's got the flu, Cam. Yeah, so I talked to him this morning and they're going to take off. They're going to go, you guys been to Podium Club before?
I
Yeah.
haven't.
Yeah. So they're going to Podium Club on Monday. And
Yeah.
then
Arizona.
he hasn't ridden the race bike yet. So they're going to start off with the last race that Josh Aaron ran, wherever the last race of the year was. I don't remember. AMA Motor America. So that's going to be their starting point.
Oh,
So Robbie's like, "Did you get in over your head a little bit there, Robbie? Because the electronics on these things, I couldn't. I don't know if I'd even take the job if somebody asked me.
It's funny.
I don't think I'm capable of it.
It's funny how Josh is back in 600s next year.
Yeah,
I don't know why. I mean, someone wins a championship, you give him, you give him another season.
sure. Yeah. That's another thing. And I'm not a big fan. I'm not it's not like I mean, I love Wayne Rainey. I've known him and Chuck forever. It's just, I don't really see anybody that wins a championship in Moto America really going anywhere. I mean, who's going to,
sadly.
I mean, it doesn't really mean not a championship in that class isn't, nobody's like Alberto Puig, it ain't going to call you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Right?
Interestingly, when the Europeans
I don't
came
know how
over here,
competitive it is.
yeah,
This the Sario kid that ran Twin Sport, he won the Twin Sport Championship. He's gone. He's over in Europe again. He won the championship. What did he get you? A handshake.
Yeah.
No prize money. That kid's
although it's a
fast.
very competitive championship, right?
That kid
Because
is. I mean, I don't know what is a Moto America, and it's not really in Moto America. It's AMA. It's not a Moto America. It's AMA. There's like the prize money is non-existent now. They got a lot of these stupid rules where you got to buy these tires. You got to buy, fuel at, $400 for a 15-gallon drum of fuel. Everybody's over the same fuel.
Well, you gotta, if you want to
You
make
know,
money, I hear if you want to make money in Motor America now, you gotta ride a bagger.
Oh God.
Fun category though.
And like I said, I've known Wayne forever. We raced 250s together in '84. I ran some fun at Willow racing against him. And if we used to have, this sounds kind of mean, but back in the day, you'd see guys that did really well in AMA, and then next thing you know, they're racing super bikes, and now they're on 600s, right? And then now all of a sudden they're racing. Well, I forget. We had a saying that your career's over or close to being over when you're racing the Weir Endurance Series. I'm not saying anything about the Weir Endurance Series, but
they're not even racing
they're not even
West Coast
racing anymore.
anymore,
Yeah,
do
they've
they?
gone. I don't know what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't yeah.
But like I said, it was I was kind of done, with the eyes going. And then Sean, I helped Sean a little bit. He originally just came to me to get his chassis set up, and I had the numbers from Nick. It took me 10 minutes.
Well, you helped him enough to the number one plate, right?
Yeah. So then we did a few races last year, just East Coast stuff. I don't think we went. We did Laguna. Anyway, he and then last year, at the beginning of the year, he says, "Dude, you wanna? I think I've got enough bikes that I'm transporting because that's what he does. He's got the big trailer." So he's taken a half a dozen, 6, 7, 8 bikes across country. You charge him for that. So I mean, it's expensive, to race that whole series. You're going, Ohio and Atlanta, and you're all over the place.
Oh yeah.
So he finally got enough sponsorship, not sponsorship, but enough guys going where you can, if you do it right, you can do it for free. You're not going to make any money, but then again, he's got time away from his work. He's got a big, he's a really nice. I don't know if you've seen what he's done. Get on San Diego Sash. This guy's, he makes old, new old stuff, old doors and windows. Like they're brand new, but old school. How they're not glued together. It's mortise and all this trick stuff. I mean, the guy's. If you ever been to his shop, he's got some of these machines that do some of this stuff. He's got some really good guys working for him. So, but anyways, he wanted to know, you want to do the whole season? I went, I don't know if I can with this. So the last race, we were a couple of 1,000 points or 1,000 points behind. Excuse me, Ralph Staropoli. So we were second, and it's his first full season. He's never been to any of these racetracks. It's only his third year riding the 250, and he's racing against the guys that he races against. 80% of the guys are all ex AMA 250 guys that have been riding 250s for 20 years or 10 years, or probably 20 years since the 90s. And they're in their 60s. They're in their 60s, and in some instances almost 70. These guys aren't slow. They've been riding their 250s, for they nonstop. A couple of the guys never stopped. They've been racing Harmon since they stopped racing pro. So not only did he win, but it's just none of the tracks he'd seen, except for Birmingham, Willow, and I forget where else. But it's his first season. So Ralph had a problem. He got beat in the first race, got second, and there wasn't any chance for us to win. And then the last race, I guess, like 2 laps to go, Ralph was. I got into lappers, the 125 guys. So he got into a lapper and ended up having to run off the track to avoid him. I guess he got committed, and I don't know what he did, but he ran off and tipped over and didn't finish. They threw a red flag. So I'm kind of throwing the numbers around in my head because I don't know the point scoring system. And it's like, this guy, I think he just won the championship. And like I said, you can ifs and buts are, don't mean anything as far as I'm concerned. You either doesn't matter how you got there. Number one plate's number one plate,
True.
So I didn't know the point structure because, Dylan Benjamin, the other guy that goes from Northern California that races with us. I guess you throw out the 2 lowest point scores or something. I'm not sure.
I don't know the score
Yeah,
point.
so I don't either, but he does because he's been racing Armor for years. So he got on his phone and got his calculator, started pushing buttons, and he goes, "He's champion by 25 points." And I went, "No way!" Right? Who'd have thought? Right? But he didn't want to believe it. Sean's like, "No, there's no way. I want to see it. I want to see it from Arma." So I think we're on our way back. We're on the road for coming back from Birmingham, driving back, and I took a couple of days for them to get the numbers official. And then he finally gets a text on his phone from Dylan. So I think he went by 26
Nice.
in his first full season. So it's everybody. Oh yeah, it's a stupid little trophy. Well, stupid little trophy at AMA too, Moto America. What else to
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
No prize. And then some of the classes. For some of the races, some of the riders themselves were putting up, throwing $100 for a purse. So he finished in the top three, and he won I think he won like $40 last year, something ridiculous. It's not even about that though, right?
Yeah, it's just about getting it done.
He's got a
That's the love of the
he
sport.
won it.
Yeah.
It's Arma. It's like a stupid goofy Arma. You get a stupid little plaque, but he's 50 something years old, and he's his third year on the 250, and I'm so proud of him, dude. I mean, he's crashed. He had a couple of big crashes, shook him off. Got a couple of the tracks we went to. He's not. He's not. He's. He'll probably see. He's going to hear this. He's. You need to forget about your business back in El Cajon, because distractions in this business will kill you.
Yeah.
So I'm not
Yeah.
getting focused. He's talking to his wife all the time, and he's talking to his guys. I understand he's got a business to run, but you make them. As fast as these guys are not going slow. They make you've been down, just blink of an eye, and next thing you know, you're on your head. And you don't even know what happened.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to do. That's why I work so hard to try to get the bike good. That's the last thing I want to do is see this guy get hurt.
Yeah.
And you start remembering. You start taking things for granted. You forget about how dangerous this shit is. And then, you hear like what happened, these people dying, so,
Yeah.
there's, I still, the night before a race, I'm still nervous for this guy. I mean, he's my buddy,
Yeah.
hopefully I did my job right. And hopefully he,
It sounds kind of stupid, but I would rather die than live in a wheelchair.
yeah,
So that's what scares me.
sure. Yeah. Well, I used to skydive. I used to be a skydiving instructor, 20 years ago. I've jumped out of a perfectly good airplane 300 times. So, I couldn't kill myself with cocaine. I couldn't kill myself road racing. Gotta try something. Yeah. So yeah, and I've had two instances where my main chute got tangled.
Ugh.
Right. You always pull at 5,000. You never go into you can, right? But if you don't, if you go under 5,000 feet, then you have a main problem with your canopy, where you got to cut it out or get rid of it before you pull your reserve.
There's no time.
You're falling at 125 feet per second. You run out of space. I mean, there was a couple of times, one time where the chute, you pull it, you go on at 14,000, about 4 miles up. So you get close to 5 and you pull it before 5,000. I mean, you can go under that. We usually pull higher so you get more sailing time because there's sails. So I had to, I wasn't paying attention, and I got like an 80% deployment. There's ways you can try to dump and refill the chute. No success. So I tried twice, and I should have got rid of the thing straight away. So there's these little things that release the canopy, but since you release the canopy, you got to get airspeed. You just can't pull the reserve chute. You got to get up to 70 miles an hour. So
Yeah, otherwise it's not going to open.
the drag chute pulls the canopy out, right? So there's a little buzzer thing on it's a altimeter thing around your wrist, and when you get under 1,000 feet, it starts going woo 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 buzzing on your wrist. That means it's fucking. You better fucking get something done. And then you can download all the altimeter stuff when you get on the ground again. And the secondary chute opened at 450 feet above the ground.
Oof.
Wow, that's close.
Gotten it close.
So you know what you do?
You,
Go back and go up again like 10 and a half hour later.
you start humming the Mission Impossible theme.
So when it happens the second time, right, and then you don't do it, and you ignore it, then you're an idiot. Say it. And it happened twice, and it happened the second time, and I got out of it a lot more room to spare. And it's like, you know what? That's kind of stupid,
All right,
So
and at
that was
that tone,
like,
and at that tone, we're going to finish
okay,
the episode. I want to thank Sean for helping out with the
yeah,
technical issues. And that was another episode of Edge Grip Podcast with Steve Biganski.
thanks, guys.
Uh, Go to the link in the show notes. Go to the link. We're going to put it on the blog as well. Just whatever you have in your on your credit card, just give out is one of our own. It's a small community, and it's unfortunately getting smaller and smaller every year. So let's help this guy come back and keep working and keep helping us on racetracks and making us better riders and safer riders. So
I appreciate it. I
Well
really
said.
appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. It's been fun.
fun
Haven't done
here,
stuff
fun
like
here
this in a
too.
while. Yeah, yeah.
Fun having you.
So
Thanks
what we
for
got to
coming, Steve.
do is when I get my eyes fixed, we got to all meet at the Shell station, throw a Red Bull down, and head up Angeles Crest.
It's a date.
Right? Right? Not now.
I don't know. I live in Vegas, so I'm not.
Okay, well, you're gonna have to.
It's a
Okay,
short
so I
haul.
guess I guess I'm coming out to Vegas. We're going to Pahrump for
Pahrump,
a day.
okay. You
Track day
got it.
for the track experience guys.
You got it.
But
I've been there. I've been there
Sounds good.
twice. I
John's
can't
never been
say.
there. Sean wants to go.
Yeah, I can't say I'm a big
How is it?
fan of
How
the
is it?
track. I can't say I'm a big fan of that track because I
Okay.
think it has way too many turns. It's very technical
Yeah.
and it gets
So,
very dusty over there. And it's more for it's the Corvette experience.
okay, gotcha.
So, but I'll ride it again.
It's not bad.
All right, guys. Thanks again. I enjoyed it. It's been took a little bit longer than I didn't mean to get into too many stupid stories, but some of them were okay, I guess.
We'll cut most of them out. Don't worry.
We enjoyed
I
it.
kind of that's what okay.
We're gonna make 3 episodes out of this.
I'm just kidding.
All right, boys.
All right. Thank
It's
you
been a
guys for
ride.
All
listening.
right.
We'll talk
Thanks
soon.
again, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Have a good
Bye.
one, Steve.
Bye.
Bye.
Be well.